You to this live spectacular in the circle live. It's the 2024 college softball season preview show, live extravaganza. I'm Eric Lopez alongside Victor Anderson, and of course our special guest back on now from D1 softball, ladies and gentlemen. He entered the portal and he's now the big time there with D1 softball. Justin McLeod will get his thoughts on that move in a moment. Coming up on this show, we're going to break down some of the storylines in college softball this season, including the Pac-12 with Pac-12 Network analyst Jenna Becerra, as well as the ACC with Raine Wilson, who does games in the ACC Network Extra. We're going to break down the SEC, Big 12, and much, much more here, ladies and gentlemen, on this live extravaganza that is In the Circle, your number one source for all audio content, ladies and gentlemen. And reminder, on Monday, we got our 800th episode, Victor. We got our 800th episode of the show, the longest episodic show in softball history.
Bro, we are all over the place. And, of course, not only will you hear the dulcet tones of our esteemed guest, Mr. McLeod, right now, but we will also hear from a good friend from ESPN at 7 Innings, Amanda Scarborough, as well. So we're busy. And we got more stuff coming up that we may be announcing at the end of that episode as well.
That's correct. Amanda Scarborough. That'll be our 4th annual season preview podcast there. And no, we're not, you don't have to pay to get news about that in 3-4 days from now. You'll actually have it right now for free. Anyway, let's bring on Mr. Justin McLeod from D1 softball. First of all, sir, welcome to D1 softball. Tell us about the move to D1 softball, what people can expect there.
It's been a great move, honestly. I mean, doing a move like that 4 weeks before season, it's always kind of interesting, but we've had a really good time doing it. It's been a great move. What you can expect is the same kind of quality you always got from me, get from D1. Like, we're really preseason. We just finished the conference previews, and it might be my favorite preseason I've done. So I mean, it's been a really good move. We're 3 weeks in now, almost a month in now. It's been really good.
A lot of fun, great friends there. Rianne Pocu, as well as Graham Hayes, part of the great team there at D1 softball. Others, I'm sure. Should be a lot of fun. And folks, they're not giving up their number one spot. They're not going to hand it over to an overrated actor and wrestler named Dwayne for the spot.
No.
I don't even know what that means.
Don't worry about it, Justin. You just go along.
Rob in the chat knows what we're talking about.
Rob knows. Yeah, that was for Rob, who's joining us in the staff there. Let's get into it here without further ado, gentlemen. What is your number one storyline you're intrigued by this season in 2024 in softball? Who wants to kick it off?
We'll let our esteemed guests kick things off.
Okay, I think for me, it may seem a little pigeonholey, but I want to see on the field how big of a piece of this Oklahoma dynasty Jordy Ball was. We know what Oklahoma has done. We've seen the games, we've seen the results and all that. I want to see the results play out and see on the field wise how big a piece of that puzzle Jordy Ball was. She was a big piece, but how big of a piece exactly she was, I think will come out this year. So that's top of my list for things looking going into the year.
I think for me, it's going to be how the Big 12 looks with both the old guard that's leaving in Oklahoma and Texas and the new breed that's coming in with UCF, Houston, and BYU. How those three schools adjust to being in the Big 12. BYU, UCF had traditionally played rigorous non-conference schedules. They had to scale that back a little bit because of the Big 12 and that particular scheduling format. And we're really going to see the same thing play out again next year when you add Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah into the mix. But this year, it's the only season you're going to have Oklahoma, Texas, Houston, UCF, and BYU all in the same league. And I'm intrigued to see how those components play themselves out and how it can impact the league as a whole, trying to be maybe the number 2 conference in college softball in their final year in this particular iteration.
Might be number 1. A couple things I'm looking forward to. Who breaks more news? Justin, D1 Softball, or Kendall Rogers for baseball, D1Baseball.com? Holy smokes, Victor. They're all in the same umbrella now. That's like the dream team. Like
I don't know how all of that. I don't know how all of this is going to play itself out, but we will. It's like the college softball season. If everything's going to play itself out in the end, eventually, I'm sure of that.
I know this. Who have more Dr. Peppers than Kendall will.
For the record, I do not have a single Dr. Pepper tonight. We are going water and we are going Sprite tonight. So
you do realize you and I are recording this the mid-major season preview after this for the podcast, right?
Okay, there's no Dr. Pepper for the live show. There's no Dr. Pepper tonight for the live show.
There's a reason why I have my coffee on the standby, because it's going to be a long night ahead of me when you gentlemen get off this live stream tonight. So,
well, I'm actually agree with you, Victor, on the Big 12. I think there's two big storylines on the field. The Big 12 is one of them. What you just said, Oklahoma and Texas in their last year before they go to the SEC, as well as UCF, Houston, BYU joining the Big 12. How did the UCF and BYU in particular, who have been really constant teams in the postseason, especially UCF, adjust to the Big 12? The other one is obviously the final year of the Pac-12 and the swan song of a league that has defined softball for decades. How is that going to go? And how do they go out can they go out with a bang? Who knows, before they part ways to split ways. So I'm very intrigued. I think those are two major. This is a year unlike any other in softball that will be talked about for decades. And some is good, some of it is not. That's up to you and your thoughts. But here's a good first. I'm going to do some props questions for both of you here from time to time throughout the show. That's one of the new the wrinkles this season. For example, here is the first question for both of you. Will Oklahoma have more regular season losses in the non-conference or the Big 12? And I'm saying regular season, so the NCAAs do not count.
So in non-conference or conference, which one will they lose more games in?
Yes. For example, last year, Oklahoma lost one game. It was Baylor. However, it was a non-conference game. Remember, Baylor, that was not a conference. Trick question. Thankfully, we don't have any of that this year. Although I have a feeling we're going to have more of that kind of stuff in the future years. But that's all other story for another show. Well, you two are. Did I already stump you both in the first one? I'm going to go first.
Here's the thing.
Yes.
If you analyze Oklahoma's non-conference schedule, Patty Gasso always has a rugged non-conference slate. I can make the argument, though, that the Big 12 is going to be just as tough and just as stingy as what they're playing in the conference schedule. But I think they're more if Oklahoma does stumble, it will be in the non-conference this year, to answer your question.
I'm going to say in conference. I'm going to say inside the Big 12. I really like, we'll get to it, but I like Texas. I think Baylor's got potential. UCF there, and we can go more details on the who's and all that kind of stuff later. But I'm going to go conference because I think there's teams in the conference that can beat them.
I am with Justin. I think the Big 12 will have more losses. In fact, if you look at this weekend with Oklahoma and Puerto Vallarta, where they have Washington and Duke on that schedule, I think if they get through next weekend in Puerto Vallarta undefeated, I think they will be undefeated going into Big 12 play. That's what I think is going to. But that's first hot take. Wow. 9 minutes in.
Wow.
But no, I think
I will say this. If they do go through that opening weekend in Mexico unscathed, the closest I think they could come to losing will be that OU tournament on the first weekend of March. They get Liberty twice with Dr. Dodd Richardson's crew. I know they lost some key pieces, but they bring a lot of talent back. And Louisiana with Jerry Glasgow, they added some key names to the transfer portal. Yes, they lose Carly Heath, who was a dynamic two-way player for them, but that could be maybe the next toughest test for the Sooners before they get into Big 12 play against Iowa State the following weekend in Norman.
I mean, to be fair, if the weekend and it's nothing against the Cajuns or Miami, Ohio, or Liberty, but if that's your next toughest non-conference weekend, that kind of buoys Mr. Lopez's theory here. in terms of where they might lose. Because you're right, that probably is the next best shot for them to lose in non-conference play. I don't know how likely those odds are, though. And if it's second on the list outside the Puerto Vallarta tournament, like, I mean, and again, you know, the question of do they lose more in or out of conference, you could be talking about 1 versus 0. Like, you could talk about one conference win and no or one conference loss and no non-conference losses, and conferences more. So there's that caveat too. You could be talking about another, you know, 1-loss OU team and still have an answer to that question.
Now, keep in mind, gentlemen, Oklahoma lost 1 conference game in the last 2 seasons, 3 non-conference games. So I feel strong in my pick. Correct. Thank you. I still feel strong about my pick, but it's 6 and 1, half a dozen in the other.
That's why I made that's why I said that was the first question. All right. That's the beauty of it. It's not an obvious answer. But I'm with Justin. I think the Big 12 is super strong and deeper. I've talked to all the coaches obviously recently on part of the Big 12 week. Everybody agrees, even on and off the air. This is the deepest the league has been in a while. In part because they didn't add teams. You know, there's obviously, it's well documented how many teams don't play softball in the Big 12. We don't mention them because they're irrelevant universities. Because to me, I have no respect for those schools that have no softball. Anyway,
West Virginia.
What? So anyway, I will say this, but I think this is a deeper league. And let me ask you this: as I got to send out an email in a second here, because I already got people blowing me up on the phone. They're already causing havoc here in the first 10 minutes. Let me ask you this prediction. Let me ask you this, gentlemen.
Yes.
Come Selection Sunday, which conference will be the number 1 conference according to the RPI in softball?
Ooh. I'll take this one. I will say I think the Big 12 has a good chance to be in the number 1 conference. You look at Texas, Oklahoma State, those standards. You add a school like UCF, who's been in the top 20 in terms of RPI and strength of schedule each of the last 2 seasons, particularly in 2022 era, which we've highlighted multiple times on this podcast, how that got them that 16th national seed, got them to host, and eventually win this regional and go to Norman for supers. Coach Sidney Ball Malone, again, has a tough schedule for UCF, along with what they got in the Big 12. Texas Tech with Craig Snyder, they open up their season in Tallahassee, which will be full of emotions with the passing of baseball legend Mike Martin, which will be taking place. The funeral is taking place on Saturday, so the Texas Tech Florida State game is going to be moved back to 1 o'clock to a start time to accommodate that. BYU with Gordon Eakin, they always play a tough non-conference schedule. You know, Houston, Kristen Besley will have another tough non-conference schedule. I think the Big 12 will be and should be the number 1 ranked conference, but you got to think with the SEC, with the last year of their current deal before everything jumps to ESPN, don't be surprised if you see the SEC get a benefit of the doubt like they did last year with some seeding, especially with that new TV deal starting in 2024-25.
Then for me, I think it's the SEC ends up number 1 in RPI at that point in the year. It's a quick, easy answer. SEC is the SEC.
I'm with Vic. I go Big 12. I think the Big 12. I think the SEC's got some questions in the bottom and the middle there that they normally don't do. That will change in a year from now with Oklahoma and Texas adding to the league. But I think for this year, I think the Big 12 with OU, Texas, I think is a top 5, top 10 World Series contender. I think Baylor, if they're healthy, is in that mix. And then you have, obviously, Oklahoma State's very young. You've got UCF, BYU. What do you get out of BYU? Some people think, well, West Coast Conference to the Big 12, that's a big jump. But you look at all the BYU sports teams, they're doing pretty well in this adjustment, surprising a lot of people in various sports. Texas Tech, Iowa State, I think, is a team that bounces back with Jamie Pinkerton, Texas Tech there. I think the Big 12 is deep enough to edge out the SEC as 1. I think the SEC is 2. And I think the Pac-12 is 3. Justin, there's a lot of questions in the Pac-12. Forget the fact this is their last year, but there's a lot of questions within the teams in the Pac-12. Some, I would say, rosters that certainly have more questions than before. Am I exaggerating the Pac-12 here a little bit?
I don't think you're exaggerating it. I mean, if you look at what some of those teams lost after last year, if you look at transfer portal misses or non-pickups, that some of those teams have had, you think of a UCLA, what is their pitching? I mean, they have all of 300 collegiate innings on a 4-member staff, and I think it's something like 350 innings, and 300 of them come from Jada Cecil. Like it's a crazy stat like that. I think Taylor Tinsley had like 50 innings of her own. So it's like, what does UCLA's pitching look like? What does Arizona's pitching look like? What do Arizona State's transfers look like? What does Washington look like without Bailey Klingler? Like, it's a long list. So no, I don't think you're off base in saying that. There's plenty of questions to go around the Pac-12, and everybody's got one or a couple or maybe more, it seems like.
Hey, Eric, wouldn't it be nice if we had somebody who knows about the Pac-12 to jump on this podcast, this live stream, and kind of talk about that? Oh, wait, we actually do. Joining us right now, our good friend from Believe in Softball, Stanford alumnus, our good friend Jenna Becerra. Jenna, good evening from the left coast. How are you?
I like how you said left coast. So I can't say West Coast, best coast because of that?
You can. You are more than welcome to say whatever you feel on our humble stream.
Yeah, no, it's good. There's been actually a lot of rain. Can't complain compared to the rest of the country and the weather, but there's a lot of rain here right now. Storms kind of brewing. I'm like, I think it's just because softball season's brewing,
That's pretty fair.
I'm digging the hat. What's with the? Give me the story on the hat here. What do we got?
It's from the World Series last year.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Slight flex.
That's a perfect segue there to my first question to you, obviously. Let's talk about the Pac-12 and the favorites for the first time in the preseason poll ever, which surprised me when I was given this stat. Stanford is the preseason favorite, fresh off that incredible season, making it to the World Series. They're the favorites. What's your thoughts on the 2024 edition of the Cardinal and the rest of the Pac-12?
Yeah, I was even surprised. I didn't even realize it was the first time ever that in the preseason poll they were chosen to actually win the Pac-12 or Pac-10 back in the day. So that was kind of a pleasant surprise to me. I think they're still going to be, Stanford specifically, strong in the circle. Like, you lose Elena Votter, that's obviously a huge loss with her All-American talent in the circle. But you bring in a freshman like Alyssa Houston, for example, who can complement Nigel Kennedy. She's a two-way player as well. And then Reagan Krause has also, I think, proven herself to be very much able to step up in the big moments. I mean, last year, all three of them, Elena Votter, Nigel Kennedy, and Reagan Krause, all made all Pac-12. And that's just not that often that you see three pitchers do something like that in a top conference like this. So I think they're going to be solid in that sense. They have a couple people, upperclassmen in the outfield, like Caitlin Lim and Caitlin Koch will be back from injury last year. They're moving some people around. Like, obviously, they also lost a few really key super seniors that they had last year. The shortstop, Emily Young, then, center field, Taylor Gindelsberger, and then over at first base with Emily Schultz. But they have some freshmen who are looking good. And then with River Mailer having the experience she had last year to move over to shortstop, I actually think they're in a good place, and can't not mention Taryn Kern as well to bring that pop in the lineup, as obviously. So that's exciting.
Big Bat will have some pop to that offense. I know Jessica Allister is excited about her, excited about Krause when I spoke to her, that she could have a breakout year. Just didn't get enough innings because, you had two basically all-American talents right behind her. That happens, right? But we'll see, Victor. Stanford certainly the favorite.
Yeah. Well, Stanford, of course, is going to be the favorite, but I think the biggest question is going to be coming out of Westwood with UCLA. No Megan Faramo available for them. It feels like to me that they're going to have to rely a lot on their offense early on. Justin kind of mentioned it before you came on. The pitching relatively young, so they're going to have to kind of work their way through some troubles and some growing pains before they can get themselves some confidence. Do you feel that same way about the Bruins so far this year?
I think so. And I think that happens anytime you have like elite talent graduate, because it's not just Megan Faramo, it's Brooke Yanez as well, right? That they lost, for example, in the circle. But what helps in those situations is to have that veteran leader behind the plate. And so having a Charlize Palacios, I think, is going to be huge for the Bruins. And because they do have a lot of offensive power to back up their pitchers, that's also going to be helpful when you have like a Megan Grant, Jordan Woolery, Maya Brady in the lineup as well. So I think, yes, there's going to be some growing pains. I think that's expected. But I think there's also this balance of the returners being pretty hungry after their disappointing end to the season last year, not making it out of regionals. So I think it's really going to be about, can the leaders step up to help shepherd in this young crop of talent?
Okay, Miss Becerra, it's my turn. I have questions. No, so when you look at the Pac-12, you talked about it's so rare to have Stanford's 3 pitchers on the all-conference team last year, and it is. It's rare no matter who you are. It strikes me that there are several schools in the Pac-12 that maybe would just love to have a really good 2 this year. Mariah Lopez, okay, who's going to be her number 2? A Ruby Malin, who's going to be her number 2, effectively. Oregon has Scott and Hansen, Morgan Scott, Stevie Hansen. But from your perspective, how important is that number 2 for some of these teams like a Utah, like a Washington, who really need that depth behind their aces?
It's everything. I think we talk about this, I feel like every year, that the days of riding one arm are long in the rearview mirror for collegiate softball, just softball in general. I think, yes, like you mentioned, Mariah Lopez, that's key. Ruby Malin, but I think when you have a Lindsay Lopez as well, the lefty coming back for Washington, that's going to be a key complement too, because they have very different styles. One's coming from the right, one's coming from the left, and even just like the velocity and the style of pitching in terms of calling is different. So that's going to be important for them, but you have to have a number 2. I mean, Stanford, for example, doesn't do what they did in 2022 and upsetting Alabama in Tuscaloosa. They had Elena Vaughter, but they don't do that without Reagan Krause, for example. It's not possible. And so to have those in place, yes, that's going to be incredibly important. And I think that was the question mark for some teams like Arizona last year. I mean, I love the fiery competitiveness of Devin Netz, and I love that she can contribute with the bat as well. But that was a struggle point for them, was their pitching. They can hit, right? But like, can they bring their pitching together? And they have a new pitching coach this year. So there are some changes and adjustments that have been made that I think that is the goal, is to develop that staff. Every time you talk to any head coach, it's like all about the staff these days. You have to have that.
And it's funny you bring up Arizona. It's almost like you're a podcast host. You know how this works. Anyway.
You kid.
But I bring up because, the Pac-12 had Washington, Stanford, and Utah represent the World Series, a successful postseason that had UCLA go in 2 and had both Arizona schools miss the tournament, which is kind of wild. So I want to ask you about the 2 Arizona schools, Arizona and Arizona State. Who do you think is likely to get returned to the NCAA tournament? Is it Arizona, Arizona State, both, or neither? Where do you stand on those 2 schools?
That's interesting. I one of the teams that I have, on my watch list, particularly this season, is Arizona. And I've told you guys many times with the staff that they have too, and it's changed slightly, right? Like Tara Mowat left, and again, they have a new pitching coach this year. But to have like Caitlin Lowe in place, who was under Kendrea for so long, in addition to just the culture that you already understand, you already know, but then a Lauren Lappin, right? Like I saw her in the fall when she was inducted in the Stanford Athletics Hall of Fame, and she is fired up about this season, although she's always very high energy. So it's hard to kind of differentiate there, but it was really encouraging. And I think that if they can figure out the pitching situation, to me, I think Arizona can be back there. You look at the Pac-12 preseason team, which preseason awards are always, to me, it's a grain of salt that you take with them. But if you look at it, there's, I think, 4 different Arizona players on that team, because you still got Skaggs, you have Olivia DiNardo coming back, and you actually have some people in the outfield who have been there for a while, like Jasmine Perez-Chica. So they have some of those things in place. It's just, can they bring it together? At the same time, I've even seen some Arizona State fans being a little bit, fired up because there were no ASU players on the Pac-12 preseason team. So I think there's a little bit of the chip on the shoulder there when it comes to the Sun Devils as well.
That's going to be fascinating.
Well, not only that, and not to interrupt you, but not only that, them and Oregon State, the only 2 players who did not have a representative on the All Pac-12 preseason roster. So I don't think that the message hasn't been delayed by Coach Bartlett and Coach Laura Berg with those respective programs, ELo, about the lack of respect given by their peers.
No doubt. No doubt with that. So let me ask you this. Who is your sleeper or team or surprise? Because now that's become a trend in the Pac-12. Last year it was Utah, made it all the way to the World Series, won the Pac-12 tournament that helped them get that hosting spot. Oregon State was that team 2 years ago. Even Arizona was a bubble team 2 years ago, made it all the way to World Series. Do you have that team this year in the Pac-12?
Well, it's interesting because I think had people not started to give Utah the respect that they have earned, I would have said Utah again. However, they are getting some of that respect this year. Like, Stanford gets 7 of the 9 first place votes in the preseason poll by the coaches. One of those votes went to Utah. The other went to Washington. I think it's super interesting that even with that being said, that UCLA still ended up at number 2 below Stanford without having any first place votes. It's really interesting when that ends up that way. But I think Oregon is another team that could be interesting to watch because, I mean, I think back to the Pac-12 tournament last year and the game that they had against Stanford and how close that was. And they really just competed every single time. Again, Justin mentioned it, the pitching, you have to make sure Hanson, Scott, like that everybody is ready to go, healthy, and focused. But I think that they could be an interesting one to see.
I agree with you. I got Oregon. I like Oregon a lot. Missy Lombardi. They've been kind of building towards this, right? They won a regional last year in Fayetteville. They returned their 2 ace pitchers. They've added there. So Koff, a great catcher to watch from Georgia Tech. I think the Ducks could be maybe the biggest threat, I think, to Stanford in the Pac-12 title race. Personally, is Oregon. I know that's kind of, people at UCLA will see what their young pitching looks like in Washington, but I think Oregon's a team that should be mentioned in the Pac-12 title race as well.
I think so too. I mean, they're right in the middle there when it comes to the preseason poll, but in the middle of how many great teams. Again, 3 of the 8 teams last year in the World Series were from the Pac-12. So that's some Pac-12 representation on this hat too for the Swan Song. I saw you guys calling it that earlier. It's very accurate. So yes, I think they're going to be interesting. And the amount of national championships that Missy Lombardi has been a part of throughout her career, even before Oregon, and some of the staff members that she's bringing on. I mean, Samantha Martyr, et cetera. Like they know how to win. And I think that matters because every time I ask a coach, like, what's the key to building up a program? One of the first things they always say is the staff. So that's why I bring that up often.
Nate Kearney agrees, says Lombardi has done an incredible job since she's arrived, considering what was going on when she got there. Let's go to the man who has copyrighted the sweetest, the Swan Song, the sweetest thing. As he once said, once upon a time on the air, Victor. What do you got for Jenna?
Well, my big question, Jenna, is that 3 Pac-12 teams made it to Oklahoma City 2022. 3 Pac-12 teams made it to Oklahoma City 2023. Over under 2.5 Pac-12 teams make it to Oklahoma City in the final year of the league.
Wow, putting her on the spot. Come on.
Hey, you put us on the spot, sir.
She's a special guest. We like her.
So, hey, Justin's a special guest. You gave him that same question.
Doesn't mean we tolerate him. Anyway, go ahead.
I mean, I was gonna let this play out. I was just listening for a little bit.
And Jenna, remember, those two have to record with each other after we're done with this live stream for tomorrow's episode. So I don't know how that's gonna go.
This is warm-ups right now. This is warm-ups for that.
Yes, this is their bullpen session.
I mean, I think it's very possible for it to happen again because the thing about it too is you look back at last year, no one would have picked Utah, even having won the Pac-12 tournament. I still don't think people would have been like, you know what? Yeah, I think Utah's going. They were supposed to run into UCLA in super regionals, had UCLA advanced. And I think everyone had their bets on the Bruins, who were the only team, I believe, right last year that actually had number 1 for 1 second when Oklahoma, after they lost to Baylor. For 1 second, they had it. They were the only other team, right? And they made it. They went the distance. So I think it could easily happen. We've seen it happen. To your point, the last 2 years. I think, Stanford, Washington, and Utah having gone last year, but then, being in a good position this year as well. Like they got a taste of it. And when you get a taste of it, all you want is more.
Well, let me get you what Rob Steffler's kind of bringing up about Washington and ask you what he's basically implying, which I tend it's a fair question, which is, how do you feel about Washington, who lost Reynolds? They lost Husky. They lost Klingler. They lost Kelly Lynch, who's now at LSU. So they did lose a lot of personnel. They obviously returned Ruby Malin. They made that World Series, an incredible run in the postseason. But where are we on Washington? Because they were kind of up and down last year. They were literally 3 outs away from being eliminated in the regionals. They did lose some good personnel, but I do return some young talent. So where are you? Where are the Huskies this year?
It's a great question because I always look first to the battery, which is why I think about Ruby Malin, why I think about Lindsay Lopez, etc. But yes, I literally saw Bailey Klingler in person, calling her games or even just watching, change the course of a game with a single at bat. Like she was that good. There's a reason she's, able to play professionally and continue her career. She's that good. I think that they need someone like that to step up, but I think about the leadership piece from Sammy Reynolds, to your point as well. When I look back at their 7 runs that they scored in the 7th inning to continue on in the NCAA tournament and eventually go to OKC, Sammy Reynolds really started that. She was the first clutch moment that really propelled them throughout that entire inning. And I think one thing, I remember talking to my dad while watching it, and he was like, Jenna, every time you played them in college, Washington never had like a fear in their eyes, no matter what the situation was. And I think we saw that play out. So now it's like, are they going to have that leadership to kind of continue that now that someone like a Klingler and a Reynolds, who are longtime, veterans and anchors for the Huskies, can other people step up in that position? And that's not even necessarily just on the field, right, between the white lines. I mean, from like a dugout standpoint, a locker room standpoint, because I feel like that's what made the difference for them last year.
You got Nate Kearney saying Sammy also seemed like their vocal leader too, really got her team going. I agree. That's going to be interesting there. Justin, you got a question for Jenna.
Do I have a question? I have a stat. It's you were talking about
that counts.
Stanford never having been voted number 1. So I looked it up. This is trivia, Jenna, but the stat itself is fun. Do you know how many first place votes Stanford's ever received in the Pac-12 preseason poll?
I don't. I think they have received a vote before, so I'll say it's not 0.
Correct.
But I'm trying to think back. I would say no. It might be 1, but I would no more than 2 would be my guess.
They've received 1 vote. It was in 2009, and I think to your point earlier, I think it buoys your point. They got a first place vote, but were voted to finish 5th in the poll.
Yeah.
So this is not new territory for the Pac.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. That was my freshman year. And now I'm thinking back to it too. It was very much a race between us, Washington, and UCLA. Obviously, Washington goes on to win the national championship that year. And the next year, UCLA goes on to win the national championship. So it was, speaking of Pac-12 heydays, that was one of them.
So what you're saying is a year that's anytime Stanford gets a vote, first place vote means a Pac-12 team's going to win the national title. That's what you're saying.
There's a little bit of a jump there that you took, but yeah, it is.
Well, let me ask you this: how does Stanford handle the expectations? I know you've got a chance recently to host their barbecue there. I mean, the excitement is all over the place. They're going to be a team that's going to be talked about, probably the most talked about West Coast team this year. Some people believe they're the biggest threat to Oklahoma for the national title. How do you think they handle all of that, considering they have a pitcher that some might say is right now one of the faces of the sport?
Well, certainly having someone like Nigel Kennedy in the circle gives you confidence. Like, that's obvious. And like Coach Alistair will say a lot too, like it would have been a mistake for the girls who actually got to compete in the World Series last year to not bring in some kind of additional confidence now moving into the 2024 season. But it's interesting to me because something she talks about a lot too, and she did mention this at the preseason barbecue, is, even though people were so proud of their season that they had last year, the end of the year interviews that she did with each of the players, the common theme was, yeah, but we could do better. And she's like, it's like all the history they made last year, the first time going in, nearly 20 years, et cetera, to the Women's College World Series. And their first thought was, but we could do better. And I think that speaks to, though, the gradual buildup that Coach Alistair has been able to do on the farm, because initially, I think the first time that they made it back to the the NCAA tournament, the last time was 2013. They went in 2019. They were nervous. Like, you could tell that like it was new for them. They were in Florida, in Gainesville, and you could tell that it was just like a mental game at that point. They settled down a little bit, but I don't see that from them anymore. I really see like in the big moments, they are just ready. And so I think they don't think about it as they're not thinking about the World Series right now. They're thinking about every time I'd ask Coach Alistair a question, she said, we're thinking about game one, day one, every time. And I think that's been a key for them too.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. And they got a unbelievable schedule to play with too. She ain't ducking from people there. They will be the host of the conference tournament this year. Stanford will be the host of the Pac-12 tournament. A lot of exciting things going on. New, facilities built and upgrades, which I know you're going to send me photos as they develop there to rub it in. I understand that, Jenna. But I am curious. What do you think is the what's it going to be like this year in the league? Because it's a bizarre in that it's the last year of the Pac-12 as we know it. And I've talked to every coach in the league, and there is that somber sadness about, hey, this is the last year, especially those that have played in the Pac-12. At the same time, it's beyond their control. And I feel like they've kind of been able to put it on a side and say, let's just focus on this year. I'm happy to hear that a lot of them are going to try to still play each other, in particular UCLA and Arizona, which has been a hot topic beyond just softball, but it yet comes up. Jessica Alistair has even said she's already reached out to people about playing. But what do you think? Because Stanford, will be the last place where we see Pac-12 softball as we know it.
It's true. It's a weird feeling, definitely. And I think it's crazy that it's the second ever Pac-12 tournament and the last Pac-12 tournament as we know it, because it was so exciting to have that first experience last year. I have that hat somewhere over here from the first Pac-12 conference tournament last year. I think from my conversations with both players and coaches so far, people they're sad about the end of the conference. I mean, if you take a step back from it too, this is a conference that's been around for 100 years. And I think it was the Pac-8, the Pac-10, the Pac-12, but the conference itself and the core of it has been around for a century. And this particularly affects the Olympic sports and the, outside of football sports, which I think I've talked to all of you about before. But I think especially within that bucket, softball, because this is historically, without a doubt, like the most iconic softball conference that college softball has ever had. And it has the two, you just said it, UCLA and Arizona, the two with the most national championships. And they're not going to have a series against each other every year. That's automatic, for example. And I remember in 2010 watching UCLA and Arizona at Oklahoma City. And it was like, wow, this is just like another weekend in the Pac-12, right? And I think from what I've kind of gathered from them, there's this level of really wanting to make the best of it and enjoy it. And I think there's a little bit of an extra motivation to like, well, let's be the ones to win the last Pac-12 championship, and you look at UCLA, for example, where didn't win the tournament last year. They didn't move on past regionals. Like they, I think in particular are like, okay, we would really like to leave our mark here and our legacy that we know that we can. So I think it's sad. I think what I do like, to your point, Eric, is that they are wanting to kind of stay in touch and potentially have some matchups. It's just, I think what the initial thoughts are just to flip the schedule a little bit. So right now, a lot of the teams travel a lot in the preseason. And then it's a more regional slate during conference currently for Pac-12. It's going to be totally the opposite, essentially. Like for the Stanford Cal going to ACC, the Big 12, Big 10, all of it, it's just going to be the opposite. It's going to be more travel during conference play. So they might try to be more local during the preseason to balance it out for the student athletes. But there are less, definitely Power 5, but just in general, less softball D1 teams out on the West Coast than there are, further east. So they're, I think, going to try to at least maintain some of those rivalries.
Right. Could see, like, for example, Stanford host more tournaments earlier in the season and maybe host a UCLA, host a Washington, right? Could be in the which was fascinating.
It's weird. Yeah, it's going to be an adjustment for sure. But yes.
All right. I know you've got the World Series hat on. I'm going to put you on now as the host hat for a minute.
Okay.
What's the biggest question you have for the Pac-12? And if you want to ask us that question, feel free.
The biggest question I have this year? I think we've touched on some of the questions that I have around the conference this season, but I think And I don't think this is just from an alum's perspective. This is really from the fact that Stanford is, poised to potentially win the Pac-12. I think they hadn't done it since like 2005, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a long time. So it's like, you have all the pieces. Can you execute? I think that's something that I'm interested in. Outside of all the other things we mentioned about certain pitching staffs and different things, can Stanford step up and execute? They have everything in place. We did too in 2009, like you guys mentioned earlier. But can they do it? Because that's the big difference, right? And so I think that's one of the questions that I have.
Very good. I agree. All right, I'm going to give you the last. I'm going to let you go on this. You get to pick. You can do only one prediction if you want. If you want to make predictions for all three, that's up to you as well. If you have a choice, Pac-12 Player of the Year or Coach of the Year, Pitcher of the Year. Pick one. Give me a bold prediction there. Who do you like? Give me a pre-seed prediction there.
I feel like this isn't a bold prediction to say that Nyjah Kennedy could be the pitcher. That's actually the most mundane prediction of all time, I think, potentially. So that's a freebie. But you know what? Last year, I really thought Amy Hogue should have gotten Pac-12 Coach of the Year. But, the voting happens before the Pac-12 tournament, for example. But after what they did, it was like, wow, I really felt like she should have got that credit. So if they repeat in some way of the type of path that they took last year, like, I'd love to see them just get a little bit of love.
Vic, Justin, give Jenna give me a Pac-12 prediction.
My prediction will be, I think me and Nate are on the same wavelength here. Melissa Lombardi, Coach of the Year, because I got Oregon going pretty far in the 2024 season. But I like Nate's thoughts with Coach Lombardi getting the nod for Coach of the Year.
By the way, for those who are she has been knocking on the door. But for those wondering, the person that Victor's fine. The person that was walking behind him is his roommate, Ethan Wells, who's making his In the Circle debut. Justin, go ahead. That was great. Oh, yeah, that was great. He just walked in, just nonchalant. That's very Ethan-like.
And the fact that I said nothing, it was like business as usual. Because hey, it is what it is.
Justin, you got to follow that.
Just call on me and lay me out first, why don't you? Good God. Arizona makes the tournament. Move on.
Arizona makes the tournament. I like that. That's very good. Unfortunately, I agree with Victor and Nate. I'm on the Oregon bandwagon. Coach Lombardi winning Pac-12, right in the mix for the Pac-12 title. Although I think Stanford wins the conference tournament, which will be the last tournament there. Jenna, tell the audience what you are up to, because I know you got a lot coming.
A lot going on. I can't believe that it's already going to be opening day, first of all. I'm trying to wrap my head around that in some ways. But yes, season 5 of Believe in Softball podcast is
Season 5?
Season 5. It feels like it's like my COVID year, like my extra year of eligibility from 2020 being my freshman year. So yeah, it's wild. So it'll be on YouTube and all the audio platforms as usual. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Believe in Softball. I will also I'm on the call for a ton of Pac-12 Network games, ton of Stanford softball web streams for the home games that they have here on the farm. I'm actually, funny enough, the day after opening day, I am actually calling a Stanford gymnastics meet for the first time ever. So that's going to be new for me. The Friday of opening weekend of softball, I'm going to be at a gymnastic meet. So that's very, very interesting, but it's going to be fun. I'm going to be actually on the call with one of my old roommates who was a gymnast at Stanford. So that's going to be super fun.
Now, Jenna, the question Eric isn't going to ask you, but I will. Will you be gracing us with your presence in Clearwater that second weekend of the season?
Confirmed. Yes, I will be in Clearwater for the first time ever. And at Stanford for the first time ever too, but I will be there for the first time ever, and I'm thrilled. I'm super excited about it.
That is awesome news on many levels. You're going to be the Terry Gannon of Stanford here before you know it, Jenna. They're doing many various sports, and if you need a tour person for Clearwater, Justin has secondary residence there during that weekend of Clearwater.
Yes,
and OKC. He gave me a tour last year.
Oh, that's a good. Oh, look at Justin. There you go, Justin.
Justin knows all the spots.
He's giving tours to everybody. He gave me a tour to OKC too, Jenna, back in 2018.
Oh, well, now I don't feel special, but okay.
Well,
I think on
I was
that
doing
note,
good, Mr. Lopez. I was doing good.
I wasn't expecting that one. All right,
Wow.
Jenna, we're excited for you. We'll have you on from time to time this year. Talk some Pac-12. Check her workout, Pac-12 Network. She's all over the place. We'll look forward to really generally excited to see you in our neck of the woods, the Clearwater, Florida. You'll get used to the humidity.
Yeah.
Thanks for always
you
joining.
won't. No, you won't.
All right. Hey, don't give her. Come on, man.
Don't give it all away, Justin. Come on.
Well,
Yeah.
we said it was West Coast, or I said it was West Coast, Best Coast. I'll see you on the other coast soon.
Wow. There we go. That's
Yeah,
Jenna
Jenna.
Becerra. Thank you, Jenna. Appreciate you. Wow. Jenna Becerra joining us there from the West Coast in Clearwater. There you go.
And we're off, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. Who's picking Pac-12 championship teams here? Who are the conference champions? Quick picks before we move on.
I got Stanford beating Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. I got Kern being the tournament MOP, most outstanding player.
Justin?
That's a lot more detail. I'm just picking Stanford.
So am I.
That's all
I'm
I
with
have to
Vic.
say.
I'm with Vic 100%, which is a really disturbing trend.
Yeah. I am very concerned about those developments. Now, I will say we continue to sleep on Utah, and we all got burned by them last year when they won the Pac-12 tournament, got themselves a national seed, and we saw where they got to end up. And I don't know what Amy Hogan and Mariah Lopez have to do to continue to get our national respect. They're ready.
All right. They're right. They'll be fine. They'll be fine.
National respect versus pick them to win the tournament's a little bit of a different animal between the two.
Okay, touche.
Let's move to a conference that always thinks they don't get respect. The Southeastern Conference, of course.
Ooh.
They only got 12 teams in the field last year. Oh my God. Where do you guys look? What's your biggest storyline in the SEC, Justin?
I think the SEC needs a little bit of a resurgence. If you look at it last year, some of the teams that we've come to expect as stalwarts, I think of Arkansas getting upset on their home field by Oregon. I think of Florida, not the world's best showing in the postseason or in the regular season. And okay, I'm just going to say it. Even Alabama, I understand they made the World Series. I understand they somehow wound up with the number 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. But even Alabama, in that category of these teams that we've come to expect as championship contenders that maybe weren't quite up to par. I think the SEC needs a little bit of resurgence this year. Tennessee and Georgia are there. They're going to buoy them. But some of these other teams really need to boost the league this year.
I think for me, it's going to be how do these second tier schools, your South Carolinas, your Mizzous, your Mississippi States, how do they handle the SEC in its current format and get themselves ready for Oklahoma and Texas when they join the SEC in 2025? Because if they thought navigating through the SEC waters was treacherous beforehand, wait till those two join the league in 2024 and make things even more difficult. What I'm also intrigued to see, the SEC recently announced this past week, gentlemen, a change to the baseball format where they're going to a single elimination tournament. Will softball do something similar?
Well, they already do.
They already do single elimination tournament. Will they limit the number of teams that make the tournament?
No, they won't do that. They're
Play
going
a second playing game.
Yeah, that's what they're
12
going to
versus
do.
15 versus 13 versus 14. Top four.
It's nice to see. Well, it's nice to see baseball's just ripping off softball ideas now.
Shocking.
That's great.
Shocking.
Yeah, good. You bring up Alabama and Florida, Justin. I'm going to give you both this interesting question. Florida has a new assistant by the name of Francesca Anea, who's has been a frequent guest on this show. So was an analyst on the national platform, on a Florida Gator broadcast, on the UCF broadcast with some schmuck guy over there. Caleb Bro was a national broadcaster. She's now on the Alabama coaching staff as an assistant. Which of those two teams have a better year this year?
Is this for me?
Yeah,
sure.
Florida, without hesitation. That offense, and don't forget, you've got Chelsea Dobbins as the new pitching coach at Florida too, which is key because Florida's pitching staff is so young. And the one thing I'll say for Chelsea Dobbins, she's got a history with some pitcher development, but the best example I can come up with is Lily Backus, who was at Chapel Hill, where Barkley was her pitching coach for her first 2 years. Backus went from off the top of my head, a 6+ ERA as a freshman coming into school a year early to a sub-3 ERA last year as a sophomore. Now she's at Georgia via transfer. So Chelsea Barkley knows how to develop young pitchers. That's super key for Florida. So if you're asking me who's got a better year in front of them, it's Florida by a long shot, because the offense is there. The pitching has to be there. And I think that the pitching can be there. We know how highly touted those recruits are. Keegan Rothrock, Ava Brown. They added Mackenzie Wooten on just a random kind of late, already there for DPT school. Let's add her to the pitching staff, which I think is important because Wooten spent 4 years at Virginia. She's older. If nothing else, she can take some licks, but she can also give them some innings when they need it. So Florida, to me, is the easy answer to that question.
Victor?
I agree with Justin on Florida, but here's the part that the Florida pitching has a higher upside right now as constructed than Bama. Now, I know Bama gets Caleb Beaver from Central Arkansas, who was phenomenal in the A-Sun. How she makes that adjustment from the A-Sun competition. And remember, she helped be on the staff that beat Arkansas last year in the non-conference. So you have that aspect of it. But I agree with Justin, what Coach Barkley's going to do with that pitching staff. And the offense, I feel more confident in Florida than in Alabama with Falby and Skylar Adams reigning SEC Player of the Year. I feel more confident in Florida and what Tim Walton can do than Alabama. But it will not surprise me if you see those two teams late in May battling in Auburn for a spot to play in the SEC championship game, or if that may potentially be the SEC championship game altogether.
Well, if we know anything, is committees love Alabama sports teams, as we know how these teams know various sports. But I will say this. I do like Florida. I agree with you. I'm going to give you full disclosure. About a week ago, I hosted a UCF opening night banquet, and Montana Fouts was the guest speaker. So I was doing prep and as I looked at her bio, and I thought to myself, you can make the case she's the best SEC pitcher in the last decade. Like, she's in that conversation. Like, I don't know who else you would throw in there. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of talents, the Kelly Barnhills of the world and all that. But I'm not sure there's anybody that Montana Fouts isn't right there with them as far as the best SEC pitcher in the last decade. And I just don't think you replace that in 1 year. And I think Alabama, which has questions offensively. Now, I think Caleb Breaux will help them. I think they'll be a better slap-hitting team because of Caleb Breaux. But I do have questions about Bama offensive. Whereas Florida, I don't. I saw Florida up close in the fall. They are going to be dynamic offensively. I think they will end up having the second-best offense in the SEC. And the name to watch is Jocelyn Erickson, who I think could be a breakout for them in that lineup. They're excited about her. I understand the concerns with pitching. Florida and UCLA, we talked about UCLA in the Pac-12 segment, are two of the most interesting teams because they have a lot of skill position talent, but no experience in the circle. And that is so fat. It could go so many directions. There's potential in the circle, but does the youth hold them back a year? What happens if there's an injury? I personally think the difference is with Florida, with all due respect to their staff last year, it was not a great staff. So to me, this staff potentially has better with talent potential. I don't think they'll be worse pitching than last year. I think, if anything, they'll be better. Yeah. And I think that'll win them enough games. So I like Florida for that. But Justin, what do you think? You follow the league as closely in the last decade as I have. Name me a pitchers or two better than Fouts. I mean, she was the face of Alabama softball and the face of one of the main faces of the sport in a lot of ways. And I don't think Alabama can replace her in just 1 year.
I don't think they can replace her at all. You can bring in good pitching, but you're never going to replace the Fouts. In terms of the best pitcher in the SEC in the last decade, I think my one qualifying question would be in terms of general numbers and success, or in terms of how crucial she was to her team's success. Because if it's the latter, it's Fouts by a long shot.
No,
Without
that's what I
Fouts,
meant. Right. That's what I meant.
Without Fouts, Bama does not have the last 4 or 5 years that they've had. Without Fouts, Bama is in a very different position than they are right now, unequivocally. And I mean, without Fouts this year, Bama loses 8 more games. Fouts willed on sheer will, determination, and natural skill Bama to at least 7 or 8 wins this year. Think about the number of times Fouts had to come in relief in the 6th or 7th inning just to hold a slim lead that they were about to lose, just to, try to keep a game in hand. And that's just this year on will alone. So in terms of what she meant to her program, it's got to be Fouts. Bama's not in the place they're in or have been in without her.
Yeah, and that's my point. And that's my point, because you could think of other names as just as good as her from a pitching standpoint. But as far as the MVP value, I think means a ton.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Montana. All right. You take Montana Fouts off the Alabama team last year. They lose to Middle Tennessee in regionals, and we're having an entirely different conversation in 2024.
Well, let's not get into last year.
I'm just saying.
I don't even want to get into the fact they got a walk in the park regional. It was just a whole joke in itself. But anyway,
Mr. Lopez has to save his blood pressure. Still a long night ahead.
Yeah, please save your blood pressure.
Amen to that. I will say this in fairness, talking to Coach Murph, he likes the freshman pitcher there. I think they'll be fine long term, and I still think they could host this year. We know the committee will give them the benefit of the doubt if it's close.
Of course they're not going to not host.
Right. But I'm not suggesting they're not going to be good. They're still going to be fine. They're going to be good. They know what they're doing. I think Bro's going to be a big difference maker. Like I think Fran's going to be a big difference maker for their staff. I think that Florida players, they're going to know what it's like to be a Gator with her in that dugout. And Tim Walt even alluded, he likes the fact he's got a female voice in that dugout. People that have been successful like Fran. I think they'll develop them very well. I think Florida is a team that's a year away from being a national title type contender again.
Also, Eric, the outfield play for both of those teams will be significantly improved with Bro and Anaya on those staffs.
Let's talk SEC. How many national title contenders are in the league, Justin, right now?
3. Tennessee.
Georgia, Tennessee, right?
Tennessee and Georgia for sure.
Yep.
I like Arkansas. They had the same pitching
questions. Even with
questions.
the pitching questions. Okay.
Well, yeah, with the pitching questions, because if I look at the history of what Courtney Deifel has done with the pitching, the pitching is the place Arkansas can handle their bigging questions. Let's be honest. Bree Ellis might go hit 100 home runs in Bogle Park this year. Let's just lay it out there.
Yeah.
Like the offense is not going to struggle. You got Ellis, you've got Hedgecock, you've got Gamble still there, you've got Halverson. Like, they're not going to struggle offensively. If there are going to be question marks for an Arkansas team, it needs to be Arkansas. It needs to be with the pitching. Because that offense might be the best offense in the country, save OU, by the end of the year. Look at what Courtney Deifel did with Shanice Dells. She was a different pitcher after Courtney Deifel had worked some magic with her. Look at what Deifel did with the freshman pitchers last year just to get Arkansas through what amounted to a down year. If you look at it, Deifel's got a history of developing that talent in those pitchers. If that's where the question mark for Arkansas is, then they're in that category. And then throw in an LSU is probably right there as number 4. I mean, they've got the offense. They're not playing in Bogle Park, so, your home run numbers might not be as fun. But, LSU's got a veteran team. So I think there's 3. I like Arkansas because of the offense and where it is and the potential with the pitchers. And then LSU's probably there. And if you gave me leeway to say, okay, 3 and or LSU would be my or.
I'm right. Me and Justin are agreeing too much here in this early portion of the show, which is hope not good news for our picks coming down the line. I'm worried about that. But I agree with you on that, Justin. I need to keep in mind with Arkansas, with their offense, Nia Carter, transfer from Iowa, all-time hit leader. She's going to be at the top of the lineup. I can see her having a similar impact to that lineup with what KB Sides did for that lineup when she transferred in for Alabama to Arkansas, and you saw the kind of year that she had I think Nia Carter may have an SEC Player of the Year caliber year hitting behind. Think about the numbers she had with Iowa. She was doing that when she was the main component of their offense. And I got to call a lot of those games early on last year in Florida. You put Nia Carter at the top of that lineup with an Ellis, with a Hedgecock. That is a scary proposition for any pitcher to deal with. And I think Nia Carter might have a phenomenal season, definitely worthy of being SEC Player of the Year.
Arkansas has more talent than they do positions to put them in. Like
that's a nice problem to have if you're. That's a nice problem to have. You're according to Dabo and DJ Gasso.
Yeah, like that's a nice problem to have.
I'm interested to see how the pitching comes around. I mean, Courtney Deifel told me on the podcast this is the first time in about a handful of years it'll be by committee, at least to start the year pitching wise. Tricky game right off the bat with Florida Atlantic and her pupil, Jordan Clark. Watch out if you're looking for upset alert opening weekend. That Boca, Victor knows a thing or two about Paradise down there.
Yes.
Boca. I love Georgia, by the way. I think Georgia, to me, is my pick for the SEC. And I think they have all the tools. I think they have the best offense in the league. I think their pitching's experienced enough. Is it good enough to win a national title? That's, to me, the only question that I have. But I think Georgia, to me, is my SEC favorite. I'm going to go bold on that. And I think the players, they are dynamic. Tennessee's very good. I do wonder how the pitching goes without Ashley Rogers. Pickens is good. Gottschall's good, but they don't have as many arms as you think. But they do have a great player in Kiki Malloy, who I think might be the best all-around player of the sport. More on that later in the show. And LSU intrigues me. I'm going to give you the most interesting, important player in this league, in my opinion, Kelly Lynch. And I want to see how her and Tarina, that pairing. I think Beth will get the most out of Kelly Lynch when it comes to the pitching. And I think if she gets the max Kelly Lynch from a circle standpoint, plus her bat, that could be the difference for LSU from a regional team to a World Series team. I mean, that to me is the most fascinating piece of the puzzle there is Kelly Lynch on that LSU team. If she can complement Sydney Berzon in the circle among the other circles, I think offensively they'll be fine with the Taylor Pleasance and Briggs and all the returners they have. The pitching I think to me with Lynch, I think is fascinating. Real quick, because I know we got to move to our next guest momentarily, talk about another interesting conference, but give me a sleeper on SEC. Who's the sleeper? Last year was South Carolina, made a great run with Donnie Goldborn and company. Who is that version this year in the SEC for you guys?
Well, I'm going to go. Nate gives us a bold prediction. He likes Texas A&M so much, he thinks the Aggies are going to host a super regional this year with Trisha Ford. I know A&M has a lot of talent coming back with Julia Cottrell leading the way offensively.
That's been a trendy preseason pick. That's a trendy. A&M's been a trendy pick as far as a sleeper.
Yeah. Very trendy pick. Picks finished 8th in the SEC. I think if they can get the pitching right, I can see A&M being that South Carolina type, because there's always that one team in the bottom of the SEC that jumps out of nowhere. You mentioned South Carolina last year. A&M has capabilities. I think Missouri has that capability as well with Alex Honnold leading the way offensively. We'll have to see. But A&M is a very intriguing pick.
Justin?
I mean, it's a little bit trendy for a little more. I'll leave Texas A&M for later. South Carolina. I have my thoughts on A&M for future reference. South Carolina. Elena Vaughter is a better pitcher than Donnie Goldborn, even.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's a very similar scenario. Yeah, you've got a different hitting coach. Jake Epstein's not a bad hitting coach by any means. He's a baseball guy. But I think Elena Vaughter can come in and do at South Carolina something pretty similar, better than what Donnie Goldborn did. And if the offense can just deliver, I mean, South Carolina could be a solid team. So if you, by the true definition of sleeper, I think I'm going to go Gamecocks.
I like the South Carolina pick since you took it before me because, well, I let you pick first, so that was my fault. I'm going to go Kentucky. If Schoonover is healthy last year, I think they host a regional. She got hurt. That was pretty much, they were done at that point. She's back. If she's healthy, I think that helps. I know they lose Kowalik. Huge loss. Best player maybe in the history of the program. They do have Aaron Koffel back. And I trust Rachel Lawson. I would not be surprised if Kentucky hosts this year if they're healthy. So that's my sleeper. But I do like South Carolina a lot. I know Beverly Smith loves this roster. They added some pieces in the transfer led by Vodder, but it's not alone. And I think they feel they can carry that momentum from last year to this year. So that's their story on the SEC. Do you want to make a bold pick real quick? Give me an SEC prediction. I will go first. I will pick Georgia to win the SEC. And I'm going Kiki Malloy wins SEC Player of the Year.
Vic, go ahead.
SEC champion. I got Tennessee repeating. Nia Carter, SEC Player of the Year.
Wow.
Okay.
Whoa. Whoa.
Okay. I wasn't expecting that.
Look, as someone who has called Nia Carter games,
wow.
I think she can make that big of a difference with that Arkansas lineup. With those bats hitting behind her, I think she can, again, KB, look at what KB Sides did for Arkansas when she came in. I think Nia Carter could have that kind of an impact. I really do.
I'm going to go Georgia, and I'm picking regular season champion because happen in the tournament. I'm going to go Georgia. I think the balance of that's going to come down to that series against Tennessee. It's in Knoxville. I'm going to say Georgia wins that series, and that kind of is the difference between 1 and 2 in the standings. And on the back of picking Georgia to be champion, I kind of have my pick of Georgia players if I want to pick somebody to be, player of the year. I'm going to go Sarah Mosley. Jada Kearney, also a good, potential choice, but I'm going to go Sarah Mosley, player of the year. We all know what Georgia's power, the power of Georgia's team. I'm going to say Mosley maybe has the best number, something like that, and she ends up player of the year.
Very good. I'll mention Maddie Penta, pitcher of the year, since nobody wanted to bring up pitcher of the year award. Of course, Maddie Penta of Auburn, who lost to Clemson in the regionals over the last couple of years. Of course, Clemson, part of the ACC. And, of course, the ACC, unique year for them. Florida State played for the national championship. Duke and Clemson hosted regionals. Duke and Clemson both got to the super regionals. Part of an intriguing storylines in the ACC. And to talk some more about the ACC, who better to have on, ladies and gentlemen, than ACC Network Extra's own Raine Wilson, who you may have seen called the regional last year nationally on ESPN up in the Durham regional. To me, she is Miss Tobacco Road. That's her nickname, at least on this. Hello, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Very good. What is your biggest storyline you're looking forward to finding out about the ACC this year?
I thought about this a lot. Of course, like Florida State, Duke, Clemson, like those are who stick out. But I'm really excited to see NC State and UNC. I'm excited to see what kind of turnaround that both of those programs can have and how that will elevate the conference as a whole. Because of course, as they should, Florida State, Duke, Clemson, Virginia Tech, they deserve the storylines, they deserve the headlines. But, I think UNC and NC State, you can probably flip a coin and to figure out, which of those programs are going to come out and really surprise some people. And I'm excited to see that for sure.
That's going to be always the interesting question, is the middle of that pack for the ACC reign. And particularly, we know the Big Five. I'm going to call them the Big Five because Florida State, Clemson, Duke, Virginia Tech, and Notre Dame have been the constant as far as representing the NCAA tournament the last, handful of years. There's always been that 6 team. Last year was Louisville. The year before was Georgia Tech. I think that's one of my questions is, who is that 6 team this year? Is there a 6 team, and can the ACC get, once again, 6 or more to the tournament?
Yeah, I think that's the question. And I think Louisville was a shock to me last year. I mean, I knew they had some good talent on that team, but the way they played offensively throughout the year, I mean, they were a team I thought was going to make it through a regional. And they bring back Zabala, but they lose some offensive weapons to transferring. So I don't know. If I had to pick, I mean, the 6th is tough because you have the first 5. I think I'm going to throw a sleeper out. I think UNC. Let me tell you why. Because Megan Smith-Lyon is a proven winner. And I think that program has needed that for a long time. And Coach Papa is a legendary Hall of Fame coach. All respect to her and the program that she built. But the thing about Tobacco Road is that there are some serious softball fans here. And UNC, as much as my dark blue blood doesn't like UNC, right? They recruit really well. They always, like, as a kid, even if it was between UNC and Florida State, right? As when I was being recruited, it was a kind of a hard decision, right? And you think about the level Florida State was at in 2015, 2016, and the level UNC was at, and very, very different levels. But UNC is a school that can recruit really, really well. Great academic school, great campus, great atmosphere of sports, a lot of success on the women's sports side. So I think that, in talking about the sixth spot, I think UNC could be there.
And you mentioned about UNC. I know your alma mater with Duke, you get a lot of talent coming back for 2024, especially in terms of pitching. After you get that taste of not only hosting a regional, but hosting a super regional and then falling to Stanford, what do you want to see from Coach Young as she gets this Duke program, trying to get them back to the postseason and get them over to that final step to eventually go into Oklahoma City?
Yeah, that's a great question, Victor. And I think for them, I was actually there yesterday filling in at their scrimmage, which was a story in and of itself. Still in pain. But the thing that Coach Young spoke about, and I think this is going to be the key for them, is like managing their expectations, right? Because they go into last year, they lose Peyton St. George, Jamison Cable, they lose all these All-Americans going into the last season. So there really were no expectations for them. They knew they had talent coming in, but you never know how freshmen are going to turn out. There's so many factors with school, social life, pressure, all those things. And they have an amazing year. I mean, full, like to the, truckload of talent, right? So I think for them, I think the question mark is, can they manage those expectations of who they should be this year? Like, they should be a College World Series team. Like, they're talented enough to make it to Oklahoma City. They're talented enough to host a super regional, but talent doesn't get you there, right? It's executing. It's a myriad of factors, and I don't think that it's going to be an easy road just because they have talent. And also, on the other hand, too, Cassidy Curd is an amazing pitcher, right? We saw that she really stepped into the limelight last year. But we've seen this time and time again with sophomore pitchers. With all the data and all the analytics, she's the number one now. And so coaches and teams are going to prepare for Cassidy Curd. And early on last year, they couldn't. They had no data on her. She was a freshman. They had no scouting on her. So for her, it's going to be, can she add that second level pitch of a off speed to her repertoire of up in the zone? And so I think Coach Young is going to have to prepare her pitching staff to be dynamic and to change and get better than last year. And I think for those sophomores, they have to fight against that, sophomore slump of managing their expectations and just playing, the way they know they're capable of.
Okay, so I love your alma mater. Just for the record, this year, Anna Gold, love Anna Gold. But Victor stole the Duke topic, so I have a different topic for you.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean I guess it was easy to go, but love Anna Gold. Clemson, Valerie Cagle, very similar to what you're talking about with meeting those expectations that you kind of set for yourself. I mean, Cagle's the player of the year. She did it on both sides of the ball. Yeah. Clemson's gotten to the point of being, a perennial top 16 team, going to a super, that kind of thing. Very similar vein for Clemson. Give me your thoughts on Clemson.
I think a lot of people forget that last year, they had an amazing start. I think like at one point they were 35-1. And then they hit a skid. They got swept by Florida State. They lost one to NC State, and then they lose the series against Virginia Tech. And there were question marks whether they should host a regional. And I know, now looking back, they nearly beat Oklahoma in game 2. And we all know game 3 is a toss-up, right? Anything could happen, especially when you have Cagle. And so I think people often forget that they hit that skid really hard. And I was lucky enough to have a former teammate on that team. And for them to go from a 16 seed where a lot of people didn't think they should host to then go win that regional against a really good Auburn team and a tough regional, and then go to Oklahoma and play the way they did, I think that gives them so much confidence going into this year. Just because their strength of schedule early on last year was not something to stand out, And so now I think John Rittman and his staff have scheduled a really, really solid schedule for them early on. And I think, I was playing against Valerie Cagle. I was like, she's not Superwoman, right? Like she's going to, at some point, I'm going to poke her and she'll be like a real life person. But no, she's a superhuman. Like she's amazing. And I don't foresee, like I've been wrong so many times about her being a human. So I think she'll be, unhuman like again and an amazing player once again for them. But I also think that like that next level of experience for the rest of their roster is going to be huge. They get Alex Brown, Alogaleo, Mackenzie Clark, like all these names. I think that just one more year of experience is going to be so big for them. And my Duke friends are going to be mad, but I think they have a good shot at the ACC championship this year. I think they're my pick if I had to pick one over Florida State, which I know my Duke friends are going to text me and say, you're going to eat your words. But yeah, just looking at the depth of that roster and the pitching staff, like Valerie Cagle is their number one, of course, but they're pretty deep. Like Millie Thompson doesn't get nearly enough credit. And McCubbin as well. And I know I'm missing some names, but it's a pretty deep pitching staff in that 1 year of experience last year. And you almost beat Oklahoma in game 2. I think they're confident and they're ready to go this year.
You mentioned Florida State. How much of that pick is because Florida State doesn't have Kat Sandercock and have a young pitching staff with Lonnie Alameda, who I talked to? They're going to kind of do what they started doing last year, kind of control the innings. McKenna Reed and company. They have a freshman they like. But they may have to lean on their offense early in the season. How much of that pick is influenced by that?
Maybe some of it for sure. But, back when Catherine Sandercock was that young pitcher, like looking down the lineage of Florida State pitching, it's always kind of been that story of like, okay, well, we lost Megan King. Who's next? Or, okay, we lost Catherine Sandercock. Who's next? And I think it just speaks to Coach Alameda and her system. And she does some like super, I don't want to say unconventional things with her pitchers in that, like in games that you're like, why would you not put your ace in right now? She'll put the freshman in who's had 4 innings on the year. And I think that speaks to her ability to know her staff and to trust the system that she's created. And so I would say Clemson's number one, not because Catherine Sandercock leaves Florida State. I think more so Clemson's just that good this year. And I think they have confidence. I do think we have to talk about how good Catherine Sandercock was. I mean, what an incredible arm. But that's an arm that learned from her seniors above her. And I'm sure she imparted some wisdom on McKenna Reed. And McKenna Reed kind of has a similar story as Cassidy Curd in that she surprised a lot of people last year with what she brought to the table. But now people will be preparing for her. But there's one thing I know about Coach Alameda is that she's elevating her arms year in and year out. So I expect them to be top of the conference once again.
One of the things I want to bring up, me and Amanda Scarborough, we talk about this spoiler on the 800th episode of the In the Circle podcast that comes out Monday.
Thanks for ruining
Monday
the announcement.
Spoiler! I said spoiler.
Yeah, you did.
By the way, Amanda Scarborough, if you want to get an early advance screening, you can watch that interview after the live show here on the YouTube channel. But one of the things that her and I have talked about, because her and I have been on the ACC bandwagon really for the last 3 years, but the biggest question is who breaks through other than Florida State and gets to Oklahoma City? We thought 2 years ago that was set up to be the year with Pete DeMoore and Vatek and Keely Richard, Clemson and Duke there, but only Florida State has broken through the last couple of years. What does it take? What is it going to take for someone other than Florida State to represent the league in OKC? And is this the year that it happens? And particularly, you mentioned Clemson. It feels like for Clemson, this has got to be the year for them, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is the year for Clemson. I think the way that they do it is by resting Valerie Cagle as much as they possibly can early on. Keep her healthy, because at the very end of the season, I mean, she's a workhorse. She can put some serious innings in for your team. But they're such a good staff, and like I think going into later parts of the year, I think they can use that to their advantage, especially because teams will be preparing specifically for Cagle. I think Duke has enough talent for sure. and we talk about their depth in pitching, but that is actually kind of my question mark, because they bring in Danny Drugmuller and Cassie Kurt's a sophomore, and so I don't think we can understate how much teams will absolutely prepare for Cassidy Curd. And last year she was sort of this like back pocket card you could play because she'd come in and couldn't catch up. They could not get their barrel on top of the rise ball that was moving up in the zone. And I don't know. I do know a little backside information on what she's been working on. Won't divulge it publicly, but she's got to develop that second pitch. She's got to develop more to keep offenses at bay. So I think, I want to, in my heart, of course, I love Duke. I hope they do. I think they have the tools to, but I do think Clemson is a little bit better positioned to break through this year.
You mentioned them earlier with the ACC, and that's NC State. Lindsay Leftwich takes over for the program. Got a lot of talent in Raleigh for this season. What do you need to see from the Wolfpack early on? Because they're starting their season in Clearwater with some tough non-conference opponents with Iowa, Missouri, and Western Kentucky. What do you want to see from NC State to maybe have them be that 6th team that gets into the NCAA tournament?
I would love to see a signature win, like 1 or 2 signature wins early on that can sort of start to build that program. I don't think this is the year that they're going to be in the NCAA or ACC championship game or at the end of the year. I don't see that, but I would love if they proved me wrong, because I think that that's a program too that's just ready to explode. I mean, now that they've got Leftwich in there, who's a winner, an amazing coach. I loved her interview in the fall with you, Eric. I just think she's got such a good aspect, or she's got such a good overview of how to make her team great through the process and loving on her players. So I'd love to see them do well, but I think it's going to be a build, right? I think a program like that needs to really, really buy in year one and sort of set the seeds for a foundation that they'll hopefully see some fruits of their labor in year 2, year 3, and year 4.
Okay, let's talk pitching a little bit. Specifically sophomore pitching.
Okay.
Because that class of freshman pitchers last year, you've talked about Cassidy Curd, there's McKenna Reed at Florida State, and then even go to some of those, and then Michaela Castro at Notre Dame, even Madison. Such a huge class of young freshman pitchers. Even the Madison Insco at NC State, showed signs of brilliance. Maybe we don't know, but such a huge class of pitchers. Now they're all in that sophomore year, in that second year. They've got a year under their belt, etc. Give me your take on that huge group of young pitchers that the ACC now has, all in that not quite do or die, but little treacherous sophomore year.
Yeah, I think they were so impressive to watch last year. I mean, I'm thinking specifically of Castor at Notre Dame. Such good stuff. And I think that with it can go one of two ways, right? The experience of your freshman year can really inform you and put you in a more comfortable position your sophomore year, and kind of lead you into complacency in a way. And I'll explain that. Meaning, if you have really good stuff your freshman year and you have high strikeout numbers, low walk numbers, you might think, okay, I've got good stuff. That's all I need to do. But the hitters in this league are good enough, and the hitting coaches in this league are good enough to adapt. And so if you as a pitcher, as a sophomore, do not adapt to what you did incorrectly or what you could have improved on, I think that hurts you really bad in the long run. So of those sophomore pitchers, I think it might be split down the middle which way they go. Do half of them improve, half of them develop a second pitch, or do half kind of get complacent and say, oh, this is the best I got. This is what I've got. And so I think that'll be a really interesting sort of vein. For example, Lindsey Grine at Virginia Tech is another one, a sophomore, very good stuff last year, worked really well up in the zone. If she can develop her changeup and drop ball, she's going to be a problem, especially with Lemley, who works really well up in the zone as well. She's going to be a problem. And I think that could be said for every sophomore pitcher. Can they develop that secondary pitch past the changeup? Can they go all 4 zones, all 4 quadrants in the strike zone? It'll just be so interesting. I'm really, really excited to kind of keep my eye on that aspect of it.
Well, you host podcasts. I was thinking what you were thinking, and you brought up the Hokies there. They're pitching. What is your thoughts on the Hokies and Pete DeMoore's team? I talked to him obviously recently. They lose some bats, but he feels pretty good about those players replacing those bats, and he's definitely one that's, needless to say, a little more relieved about the illegal pitch rule
Yeah.
adjustment this offseason, among other things. What's your thoughts on Pete DeMoore? We haven't talked about Virginia Tech during this block, but they've been in the mix. They were in the regional final in Athens last year, and he's done a heck of a job building that program.
I'm on the Pete DeMoore fan wagon, whatever you want to call it. I think he's a brilliant mind in the game. And I think last year was sort of a product of you lose Keely Rochard the year before. And I feel like, I don't know. We're not in the dugout. I'm not in the locker room with them. But I'm sure Emma Limley felt like, I've got to be that girl. Like, I've got to be perfect. I've got to be the Keely Rochard. Now it's my time. And that, along with, she realizes she just needs to be herself. She's good enough to just be Emma Limley. She doesn't need to be Keely Rochard. And to your point about the pitching rule, I think that just takes off a weighted backpack for her, and not to worry about the pitch calling and the crazy moments in the playoffs. Like, I think that will be huge for Limley and the rest of their team. And they talk about it, and for them, it was a down year last year. They were not happy with the results, and they still made it to a regional on Sunday. Of course, Georgia, pulled their bats out and showed who the dogs were. But, I think Virginia Tech is poised to have another really good year, and I expect to see them in the top 4 of the conference again. They've kind of been under. We talk about Duke, Clemson, Florida State now, but Virginia Tech's probably knocking on the door saying, hey, we're right up there too. So I think they'll be really, really fun to watch. I think they got some good bats in the lineup, and I think Emma Limley will be kind of freed of that, back of her head pitching rule, mishap.
Let's talk about you a little bit here. You are a Golden Mike Award winner. Congratulations for Breakout Star.
Thank you.
In 2023. So that's well earned. Tell us a little bit how you got into broadcasting. You're an accomplished player yourself. Tell me how you decided to get into broadcasting, because I'll never forget a couple years ago. These years all go and blend, but I remember watching a Duke game and I heard your voice, and I actually texted Justin and said, "Have you heard this girl at Duke? She's pretty good." And then he told me it's Raine Wilson, because he knows everybody. And I followed you since, and obviously you had an incredible job last year. You hosted you were the analyst in the regional nationally in Durham. Just take us through this process of how you became get onto broadcasting.
Yeah, Eric, it is a wild story. But in my real job is I'm a travel guide, so I take people on hiking and biking vacations all over the world. And I just got back from Chile 2 days ago. But last year around this time, I came back home. I wanted to take a break from traveling, and I texted or emailed the Duke people and said, "Hey, can I be your PA announcer? I'd love to just go to the games and be the PA." She was like, "Sure, yeah, it's $50 a game, something like that." And I was like, "Oh, great." And they're like, "Well, we have some openings if you want to try to be an analyst." I was like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Yeah, it's like this and whatever." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And I was like, how much is it a game, just by chance, And it was like double the PAs. I was like, okay, I'll do that. And so I got into it that way. And the first weekend I did was Duke versus Notre Dame. And I just loved it. I had some really good play-by-plays that I worked with, because they're the backbone of this whole operation. And specifically Dean Linke, play-by-play here in the Triangle. And he mentored me right early on. He was like, listen, if you want to do this, I need you to jump on my back. Let's go. Let's try to do this thing. And what that meant was taking any game I could, going to ECU to work, going to Virginia Tech to work, just trying to get my voice out there as much as I possibly could. And then right around May rolled around, and the goal, the home run of the year, the crazy moment would have been if ESPN called and said, "Hey, do you want to work a regional?" And in May, they gave me a call and asked if I could. I was like, absolutely. And, I wasn't necessarily supposed to go to Duke. It just kind of worked out that way. I think the matchups weren't quite as star-studded. So they sent me to Duke. And it was an amazing, amazing experience. And so I'll come back and do about 15 or 20 linear games with them this year. So I'm really, really excited about that.
I believe, Vic, that's called the breaking news, Vic. I don't know if we have a siren for that or on the live version. But that's awesome. I did not know that. Thank you for the congrats on that. That's a fast rise, by the way. Like, I've been doing this 18 years. I'm still figuring this out. You're figuring this out in a year or so.
Well, yeah, Eric, I'll tell you something about our common friend, Amanda Scarborough. After my first weekend, I sent her a message on Twitter. I said, "Hey, Amanda, she's like the best in the business. I think she's awesome. I think she does a really good job as an advocate for her sport too." And I tweeted or X'd, sent a direct message to her and said, "Hey, I'm beginning to do this. I think you're a huge role model for me in this business. I just started." It's like, she gave me her phone number, shot me an email with all these tips, and has since then been a consistent advocate, retweeted things that I've done. And so, like, people like that, just, I owe her, I owe Chad Lampman, the executive producer at Duke. It's all these people behind me that advocated for me behind the scenes. Like, that's what led to this kind of this transition of my life. And I love it. And people like you, Victor, Eric, Justin, like, y'all are such amazing advocates for our sport and so passionate. And you've set the standard for knowledge and preparation and understanding the people behind the sport too. So I just got to thank you guys so much for all that you've done.
That's pretty awesome. And man, by the way, you're not the first to have mentioned that. Amanda is one of the best at helping people behind the scenes.
Yes.
Across the sport. You're like that's awesome. That is pretty good. See, Justin's writing notes here. You just realized there was breaking news here, and he's right now writing.
Eric, I found the sound.
Justin's been writing notes from the beginning.
Do we got? Oh, we have Victor. What do we got?
We got this.
Wow.
That's what we call breaking news. Spoiler. There you go. Big news there. You're in the podcast. And by the way, we're going to get you back on during the season, our regular podcast, to go longer platform, because your story is fascinating, and I want to dive deeper into that from a broadcasting and comparing that to playing and the adjustments you've had to make going that. But you have a life, so we got only a couple more minutes with you. But tell us about the podcast, because you're also now part of a podcast.
Yeah, filmed the first one today, recorded the first one today. The podcast is called Softball Speak Easy. It's at SB Speak Easy. And the goal is to document the year that Duke has through the lens of Kelly Torres, who's their starting catcher. And also provide like an insight into what it was like to kind of go a little bit more unfiltered on like the stories behind the success, behind the failures. Specifically, like when Duke won the ACC championship in 2021 in the tournament, there's a big backstory there of like things that happened that aren't so pretty, aren't so like cute and butterflies and victory and yay. And so we want to go into that kind of thing too, and just kind of shed light for young people who are interested in playing our sport at the college level to understand like it's reality is hard sometimes. So we want to talk through that and kind of document the Duke softball season from sort of behind the scenes. So we're really, really excited. The first episode comes out this Wednesday. So super, super pumped.
That's pretty awesome. It's kind of like an athlete's point of view. It's become a big thing in podcasting with athletes having their own podcast. The Kelsey brothers have their podcast. Draymond Green's that's become more and more popular. But we haven't seen that in softball. So I feel like you're breaking ground here a little bit by having a current player during the season kind of talk about what's going on in the sport during the season with their team and stuff.
Yeah, gotta credit the Kelsey brothers, and like Mookie Betts has one too. Like all those, all those athletes, and I think we're missing that, and not only in the softball front but the women's sports front. So yeah, we're excited to get into it.
It's pretty good. I'm pretty awesome at that. That's pretty good. I'm excited. Congrats on that. We're gonna be following, and we're definitely gonna get you back on to talk more in depth about that and much more. We're gonna let you go on this. Give me a bold prediction. Give me a prediction in the ACC this year, or that you're looking forward to finding out this year, whether it's a conference champion, player of the year, pitcher of the year, or a bold pick about the postseason. What's your thoughts on the ACC 2024?
I think the best hitter in the ACC is going to be a girl named Amina Vega. Duke Amina Vega. Write it down. No, I think I think Amina Vega is a professional. The way she hits the ball is so impressive. And I think she'll learn from last year and the tendencies. I think she'll be the best hitter in the conference. And Anna Gold will be they'll probably be fighting it out at the top of the conference.
I love that. It's bold. See, that's what I'm talking about, Justin, Victor. You can take some notes Raine right here about bowl. That's pretty good.
I'm trying to get us clicks. That's all this is.
I love the
All about
setup.
clicks and views, baby. Clicks and
Right.
views.
That's all
That is a fantastic microphone, by the way.
Thank you.
Are
It's-
set. That is good.
It's listen, Audio Technica ATX 2100 and $50. $50. That's it.
Hey, Audio Technica, you want to sponsor our live streams?
Yeah,
Hit us
please. Yeah,
up.
no shame. Plug. No shame on
No
that.
shame whatsoever.
Oh, very good. All right, Raine, we're going to let you go. Tell us one more time where they can find your work throughout the season. We're looking forward to it on many platforms. Tell us where they can find us.
Yeah, at SB Speakeasy, you'll find us on all platforms. And then my personal handle is Raine_Wilson, RAINE_Wilson. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And go Devils.
Enjoyed it. There it is, Raine Wilson joining us there. Go with the Blue Devils. Shout out at the end there. We're going to have some Duke talk later this week on In the Circle as well.
Yes.
Stay tuned for
Yes,
that.
we are.
All right, let me ask you both your reaction. She just picked Vega to win ACC Player of the Year, best hitter. Give me a bold ACC pick here, gentlemen. Follow her, by the way. Good luck.
I'm kind of glad she's she ain't gonna like this pick.
Oh,
So I'm glad she's not in the live stream anymore. Real bold prediction. You want bold, Eric? ACC Player of the Year, Autumn Owen from North Carolina.
well, she's kind of on the Tar Heel bandwagon, so you two are not that far apart as far as North Carolina love here.
You look at what Autumn Owen did in Marshall with Megan Smith-Lyon bringing her entire coaching staff to Chapel Hill. Autumn Owen going along with her. I think she can thrive in the ACC. It would not surprise me if she goes 20 home runs, 65 RBIs. And I think Autumn Owen will be right up there battling with McKenna Eddingfield for ACC Player of the Year honors.
Justin?
You want it bold, Mr. Lopez. There you go.
Good. Props. Tip. If I had a hat, I would tip it, but I don't have a hat on.
Yes.
I'm sorry. That was a good line.
Yes, it is.
I mean, I can give you the easy one of the ACC gets one team to Oklahoma City and it's not Florida State.
Ooh.
Like, I don't know how bold that actually is.
That's it. No, that's good. That's never happened before. I like that. That's good.
I'll add to it, and I'll add to it and make it a double pick, and maybe that's a little bolder. I think the ACC gets no more than 5 teams in the NCAA's.
That's not as bold.
That's not super bold either. It's just adding to it a little bit to make it a little better offering. That's all.
Well, it sounds like you're avoiding the individual awards too. I noticed that. Very good.
Sounds like it to me.
No, I mean,
No?
if you want me to pick something, I think Anna Gold's. I mean, she went Amina Vega. Raine went Amina Vega. I'll go Anna Gold.
Fair. There we go. Got it on record.
Yeah,
Got it on record.
folks.
It's good.
Who are you guys picking to win the ACC?
Duke.
She went
Texas.
Clemson. You're going Duke,
Well,
Vic?
Florida State.
You're going
Since
Florida
we're
State?
missing a wrestling paper, since wrestling seems to be on the tongues of everybody this weekend, I'm gonna quote an old wrestling adage from the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and I'll modify it. To beat a team, you have to beat the team. And until somebody can beat Florida State in a money situation, then I'm not gonna bet against Coacha and Florida State. So I got the Seminoles winning the ACC.
That's fair.
Justin?
Who do I think is going to win? Duke.
Got Duke. I'm with Vic. I'm going with Florida State. It's kind of the similar philosophy that Vic has. Plus, I think their ACC conference schedule is very favorable.
That's an excellent point.
I do like Duke to win the tournament. Duke's the host for the ACC tournament.
Now, the ACC tournament has always had a couple wacky outcomes in the last few years. So,
and I'm actually with Justin. I think the ACC will be represented in Oklahoma City, but it will not be Florida State because it is an even year, and Florida State has not made the since 2018. They've missed. Granted, there was no World Series in 20, but they didn't make it in 22, and they had, to me, was the second best team in the country. So,
granted, they ran into the Fighting Betharinas that year. So
no, that was the Mississippi State.
Mississippi State, Mississippi State together, not knocked out by Mississippi State.
They did win the national title in 18, so they have that.
Did. So
I do have questions about the Knowles pitching, but I do think they win the ACC.
Well, Eric, you mentioned the schedule for Florida State. They start the ACC season hosting Duke After that, at Pitt, host NC State, at Louisville, host Notre Dame, at Boston College, host North Carolina, at Syracuse. That is so
Very
no
favorable.
Clemson,
Very favorable. That's
no
what I'm saying.
Clemson,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
Virginia Tech, and they get Duke to start the conference season at home.
Favorable. That's
Very
why I like
favorable schedule.
So I like Florida State to win the regular season, but I do think Duke and Clemson are really legit, and one of them could represent, maybe both represent in Oklahoma City team there. We'll see how that goes. Of course, speaking of, we moved to OKC. Jordy Ball, the national two-time national champion, now at Nebraska. That's obviously the big story offseason, her move to Nebraska. My question to both, is Nebraska the closest? I'm going to say this. I'm going to start with this. If I gave you the choice, Jordy Ball or the field for Big Ten Pitcher of the Year, who you taking? I'm taking Jordy Ball for the record. I'll go first. Jordy Ball against the field in the Big Ten for Pitcher of the Year. I'm
just going to stare at you for another minute. Is that an actual question?
It came out of my mouth. It was a question.
This is like peak 2000, Justin, when Tiger Woods is at the apex of his powers in golf, and every like Wednesday on PTI, Kornheiser and Wilbon asks, "Do you like Tiger at the field?" And we always take Tiger.
Well, Jordy Ball probably will be wearing red on some Sundays this year. So,
very good.
Hey, I don't get the wrestling references, but a golf reference I can make.
All right, Vic. All right, so it sounds like Justin agrees with me. Who are you taking, Ball or the field, Vic?
I will go Jordy Ball. Go Jordy Ball.
How about this? Are you taking Nebraska or the field for the Big Ten championship?
Field.
Who do you like, Vic? Give me a team you like.
Right now, I think honestly, it's going to be between Northwestern and Michigan. Potentially Minnesota has a lot of talent returning back from 2023. The injury to Abby Squires, Nebraska announced that she's going to be out the entire season a couple of weeks ago. I think that's going to be a blow. So that made my pick a lot tougher. So I got the field and then Nebraska right there.
Okay. Justin?
Nebraska. By a slightly slimmer margin than my pick for Ball as Pitcher of the Year.
I have Nebraska as well. I like Minnesota. Returned 6 of 9 offensively. I think offensively, Chavez is a kid nobody talks about.
Yes.
Could be is my pick actually for Big Ten Player of the Year. Let's just go bold. Player of the Year. Offensively. We'll go with Chavez on that.
Okay.
But I think she's legit. The question is pitching with Minnesota. They lose Autumn Pease. But, Piper Ritter quietly has a great resume. He's developing pitcher.
Piper Ritter, I don't think we talk about her enough in terms of the pitchers that she's developed for when she became the pitching coach and then transitioned to becoming the head coach of Minnesota. So she's going to have another arm that we're going to be talking about in early to late April about where does this kid come from? Well, another product from the Piper Ritter pitching factory up in Minnesota.
And I a part of me wonders, Justin, if maybe Minnesota is the second best team, giving Piper that benefit of doubt. Indiana on paper maybe is the second best team. I'm curious how Indiana handles expectations. They broke through, they made the tournament, regional final. They lose Taryn Kern, but now people have expectations about Indiana. Northwestern's very young. They're kind of like, I'm curious to see them in Clearwater. I'm not saying they're not talented, but I am curious there. Then Michigan, can they bounce back after missing the tournament? Year 200 Bonnie Toll. Can they score runs? That was the thing that hurt them last year. They lose Lexi Blair. Wisconsin lost a lot. Iowa lost a little bit. Victor, you follow Iowa.
They did. They lost Ian Carter. They lost Donnie Lecker, transferred to Louisiana. They do have a lot. Vasquez as well. They do have a strong recruiting class coming in. They do have a couple of bats they added in a transfer portal, which I think is going to be huge for Coach Gillespie in terms of relying more on power, in terms of like hitting station to station like a typical Renee Gillespie team does. Eric, you and I know that very well from her time at UCF. Iowa, I think with the confidence they got from making it to winning the NISC championship last year, and we've seen the success that teams have had the following season after winning that tournament. You saw what Baylor did with Glenn Moore. You see what Liberty did with Doc Richardson. Iowa, I think, can be in that position. They're going to need a lot to contend to be competing for the Big Ten championship. I think Iowa could make the NCAAs this year.
I'm curious about the pitching. They have a lot of arms. I think they have a really bright pitching coach in the sport.
Manny Gardner-Colgate. And I want to give you this stat, Justin. I want to give you this stat. Iowa's ERA 2022 pre-Mandy Colgate, Gardner-Colgate, excuse me, was a 5.16 in the Big Ten. She shaved that off 2.5 runs last year. And now she has Jalen Adams back for her sophomore year. She has more arms available to her. I'm intrigued. We'll find out how Iowa looks at opening.
Can Adams be the number one, Vic? And is she the one that you would make the favorite to be the number one at Iowa there? I mean, that's the big. To me, that's going to be the question.
She has the talent and the capability, but we'll find out opening weekend. Iowa's going to get tested early. They got NC State. They got Utah on a Super Sunday in Clearwater. So Notre Dame as well on that Saturday. So we're going to learn a lot about the Hawkeyes and where they can stand on an opening weekend. By the way, Fang Nai, I'm going to pick, since you asked for my prediction, I think Northwestern, they'll find a way to win the Big Ten.
Whoa, Vic going against the trend, going Northwestern to win.
No, I do want to stress, the Big Ten tournament this year is in Iowa City. Iowa's hosting this year. So if Iowa gets in and gets that crowd behind them.
Are you picking Iowa to win the Big Ten tournament?
No. I said Northwestern to win the Big Ten.
Yeah.
The tournament's being held at Iowa.
Yeah. And then you said Iowa in the crowd.
I said Iowa, if they get in with the crowd, it could get interesting. But my official pick is Northwestern regular season. Remember.
I'll say this. If you're right and Iowa's in the bubble, they may need a good run in that Big Ten tournament.
Yes.
To your point of home there. Give me a sleeper. I'm going to, Justin, this is the thing. This Big Ten feels like there could be a team from the 9-10 spot that surprises into the top 4 or 5 that we're not talking about, or vice versa. It's a wacky league. Nobody's going to watch it.
Because nobody can watch it.
Unless you have Big Ten Network. Shout out Sammy Netley, our buddy. That's it. God forbid we put some games on Fox. Can we put some games on Fox?
FS1, FS2.
I understand if Fox has become the Caitlin Clark network, but can we put some other sports on there? Women's sports.
Not to be mind Caitlin Clark at all.
I'm just saying, put some other Big Ten sports on there. I am curious. Iowa is Michigan's interesting. Ohio State returns a lot. Maryland has a new head coach in Lauren Carn. She came in late in the fall. That's a big ask. I kind of like Illinois to bounce back. Kirsten Verdon comes over from Wisconsin to Illinois. Tyra Perry knows what she's doing over there. Give me a name, a team, Justin, Big Ten, to like, hey, this team don't be surprised if we look in April. They're like, what? They're in the top 4? Top 5?
Well, you just named half the conference. So can I take
nice job,
from you?
I'm trying to figure it out in my head. Like, I'm trying to figure out.
I think Maryland and Penn State have both had good the last couple years. I think both of them will take a step down. Penn State graduated both their arms. Maryland had a lot of turnover, including their whole coaching staff, but also player-wise. So I think both of them will take a step down this year. I think Illinois takes a step back up. I think Rutgers is a decent squad. I'm not saying top 4 or 5, but they're a decent squad. I do think Iowa gets better. And then sure, Michigan's an easy answer. Let's be honest. If you're going to say get back into the top 4 or 5, make the tournament, maybe Michigan's easy. Ohio State returns a lot. I'm not sure how I feel about Ohio State. There's not a lot of consistency there. So there's a lot of holdovers on the roster, pitching and offense, but I'm not sure how I feel about Ohio State. So, Michigan, I guess, fits your bill of somebody. Lauren Durkowski's a really good arm. That's why Michigan, is a contending team in the preseason here. So, if Michigan fits your bill, I'm going to go Michigan.
Over under 3.5. Big Ten teams make the tournament. NCAA tournament.
Yeah, over. I'm going to say 4.
I will go over slightly, but tough for a committee to rate a league that you have a hard time finding where they're playing.
Yeah.
Say. And I'm going to tell you, Big Ten, feel free to let us know when you're airing games. Feel free.
Please
It's
do.
called
Please.
it's this thing called a press release. I don't know if you've heard of it. Where you
by the way, gentlemen, how about announcing when you're going to schedule games? How about when you're announcing your preseason poll? Because it's the week of the season, and we don't have a Big Ten preseason poll. They're the only Power 5 conference that has not released a preseason poll as we speak on this Sunday evening.
Listen, they're busy right now breaking down the wrestling, field right now, and they're, conference.
They got thoughts on Rock and Roman. Oh, not that wrestling.
No, Ross Sport.
Gotcha. Not that wrestling. The other wrestling.
I am interested to see, in all seriousness, I've been joking here, but there's a lot of Big Ten basketball coaches that are ticked off about a lot of their games being on Peacock, for example, and not on linear television. I'm very curious to see how the softball schedule looks for them. That's something to watch. In fairness to Fox, they did pick up a Big 12 game, which is a good segue as we go back to the Big 12.
Yes.
Thank you. Justin
Killing it with the segues, sir.
We talked a lot about Oklahoma earlier about the Big 12, so let's not talk OU. Let me ask you, gentlemen, this. Who is the biggest threat to Oklahoma in the Big 12?
Texas.
Yeah, Texas. It kind of feels like a cop out, but it's Texas.
Would you like me to provide details as to why I make that pick, or do you want?
Yes, Justin. Thank you. Yes, since we all agree on Texas, please share why we all love Hook 'em that much.
Well, number one, I think Texas getting to the World Series and making the championship series a couple of years ago was incredibly key. Because if you think about it, up to that point, Mike White's career as a coach, even at Oregon, you had a lot of really good teams that flamed out somewhere in the postseason before the championship series. So Mike White's kind of broken through, and now all he's missing is a national championship. That's important because now that you've got that out of the way, now you have to turn your attention to the youth on Texas's roster. You have Reese Atwood, Leanne Good, Viviana Martinez, such a really good young core on the offense. You've got some vets that are still there. You think of a Mia Scott, think of a Bella Dayton, an Alyssa Washington. So you still have those, even Katie Simmons. So you have a really nice mix of young players with vets. Then you go to the pitching. You have Mac Morgan. You have Citlali Gutierrez. And now you have Tegan Kavan coming in from travel ball, freshman. So I really like the mix of what Texas has, both on the offensive side and in pitching. They've made it over that hump they've gotten to that point in the postseason, gotten over that hump. Honestly, I think they're a pretty well consensus number 2 in the Big 12 coming in. And the kicker, too, and I know there's a lot of OU fans that are here.
And we thank you.
Listen to the actual words I'm saying when I say this.
Listen to the words coming out of his mouth.
Thank you.
His mouth somewhere.
Well, yeah, the other direction. Yeah, but anyway.
His mouth.
I think it also is key that Mike White is the way he is, because one of the biggest things OU has working in their favor during this dynasty that we're still in, they get a 3-run lead on somebody, and that other team is scared. Like that Crimson and Cream invokes fear. You get a 3-run lead, they're not going to come back. So the fact that Mike White is the way he is, he coaches unafraid. He teaches his players to play unafraid. When you're facing a team like Oklahoma and you're riding what Oklahoma is riding dynasty-wise, that is such an important factor. And Mike White's team at Texas may be the only ones that have that going for them. I'm not saying Texas is going to take the Big 12 by any means, but if we're talking biggest challenger to Oklahoma, that's a key for why I think Texas is firmly in that position.
Well, they're going to get tested early on, Justin. Look at this. They got UCLA twice, the opening weekend of the season. They got Tennessee, Stanford, Kentucky, Northwestern, all in Clearwater in week 2. Then they are home opening weekend. They get Louisiana twice and Stanford again. And Jason brings up a very valid point. Oklahoma is going to be tested when they get ready to play Oklahoma. And that's going to be taking place that first weekend in April 5th through the 7th. And that's going to be in Austin. I think that's important. Then they get the Sooners in Austin this year, as opposed to having to travel to Norman.
Well, remember a couple of years ago, Texas had that dismal, absolutely terrible showing down in Florida to open the season. Just awful.
Yes.
0-5, I think they were 0-6 to start the year.
They went over in Clearwater, yes.
Yeah, looked terrible. Like, didn't just lose games, looked awful. And then you look at what they built up to. Like that was the exception. So that to me that was the exception by the end of the year. So that to me is one thing about Texas too. And it kind of goes back to that same thing about the way Mike White coaches and about the Texas pedigree. They took their lumps early in that year. And by the end of the year, they looked like a different team. They had that switch flip in the middle of the season. And I remember saying this, whether it was on a podcast or just to somebody or whatever, but you could pin down that almost that exact moment when their switch flipped, when they started looking like a different team. And that's something that also I think is key for Texas and why I'm as high on Texas as I am this year. You have young talent, and you've seen this track record that at Texas, say the last 3 years, what Mike White's got them doing,
right?
Getting over that hump, making it the championship series, losing those games to start the year, and then finishing the way they finished. Different pieces of that puzzle have come together. Haven't put the puzzle together, but those pieces are there, and that right there is a big step alone.
And I think the other part of that, they won 4 games when they were facing elimination during that postseason run, mainly on the arm of Haley Dolcini. They lost that first game in the Super Regionals in Fayetteville to Arkansas, won the last 2, lost that first game to Oklahoma that Saturday in Oklahoma City, had to battle their way back, that wild game they had versus Oklahoma State to get them to the Champ Series. And things are setting up for another possible run like that this year. And Eric, I think while we're just kind of wrapping up here, Texas, I feel, is in the best position. The schedule is going to test them well. But until somebody can show us that they can compete and beat Oklahoma in a best 2 out of 3 situation, then I think it's the Sooners national championship to lose and conference to lose.
I mean, that's fine, but I'll go this prediction. Texas will beat Oklahoma during the season. That's a lock.
Now, notice, ladies and gentlemen, he didn't say beat them in the series. He said beat Oklahoma.
Correct.
So
Austin, Texas, circle that series. OU at Texas. Texas beat them 2 years ago there.
Yeah, that is on WrestleMania weekend, by the way. I wonder
yes.
if anyone else would jump in and try to take that spot.
And I'll tell you this, Baylor, if they're healthy with those arms, beat Oklahoma last year and was within a foul ball catch of winning against Oklahoma 2 years ago in Norman. So if they're healthy, Baylor, I think, is a threat. And plus, Oklahoma does have to go to UCF last part of April. That's a tricky series. I'm just saying, I made this. I asked you guys about more losses, Big 12 or not. I think OU won't lose more in the Big 12. If they lose, will be in the Big 12 more than non-conference. I think this league is strong. I'm interested, gentlemen. Oklahoma State, Justin, is a fascinating team this year. They lose Kelly Maxwell to Oklahoma. They make a coaching change on around Christmas. Thank you, Justin, for breaking news around Christmas time. I really appreciate. I'm doing a basketball game right on Christmas week, and I get a blown up message about your breaking news about a change on the coaching staff at Oklahoma State. Thanks a lot, Justin.
I would be happy for these things to only happen in the summer. I would love time off every now and then, I promise you.
But I am curious, what we expect from the Oklahoma State, because everybody's focusing on the Maxwell drama and the state of Oklahoma. That's been long talked about enough. I'm more curious about their bats and their defense. They lose a lot there on that side of the ball. They're very young, and Kenny Gajewski even acknowledged to me he doesn't know what he's got. May not know for a few weeks into the season what they got here. Where are we with Oklahoma State as far as 2024 is contention in this picture in the Big 12 with Texas, Baylor, and UCF, for example?
Fascinating, interesting. There's a lot of superlatives that I've used to talk about Oklahoma State. To be fair, even if Oklahoma State still had Kelly Maxwell, even if Kelly Maxwell was still a Cowgirl for one more year, I would still have doubts and questions about Oklahoma State because of what I saw, even from a team that still had Maxwell, still had Kylie Naomi, still had Cheyenne Factor last year. Now you don't have any of those. Now you come in with a lot of young players. You still have some good talent. I think of a Talon Edwards sitting there. Talon Edwards is a talented skill player. Michaela Wark, great start. There is still talent on this roster, so it's not like the cupboard is bare here. That said, I have so many questions. Let's go pitching first, because I do have questions about the pitching. Lexi Kilfoyle is a quality arm, quality bat for that matter. Like she'll probably, I have a feeling she's probably going to hit a good chunk this year. So Kilfoyle, okay, cool. She's an ace. Well, define an ace. Is she 200 innings an ace? Can she hold up for 200 innings? Okay, well, maybe not. So maybe she's 150 inning ace. Great. Who takes up the rest? Is it Kyra Aycock? Kyra Aycock wasn't a world beater last year. She was all right. She wasn't bad. Had some good moments. Had some signs of brilliance. Also looked like a rookie. Okay, so is she the number 2? Okay, well, then what's behind them? So pitching-wise, I have so many questions. So start there. Go to the offense. They do lose a lot. You have an Edwards. You have a Wark. You have some talent that's still there. But with what you lose, it looks like a very different team. It looks like a very different team on paper. They did not go to the portal like they normally do. You have Caroline Wong, used to be Caroline Hudson, got married this summer, the 2-time ASUN Player of the Year in that lineup. She's a 5th year. She's been around college softball for a minute. She's going from the ASUN to the Big 12 to finish her career. What does that look like? Still a quality hitter. Don't get me wrong. Still a quality hitter. But that's really all that Oklahoma State got out of the portal. Like, that's it. So the offense, I question their depth. I question their offensive identity. Are we looking at a team that hits a lot of home runs? Are we looking at a team that steals a lot of bases? Do we see a lot of doubles off the wall? Is it a lot of hit and runs? What is it? I don't think anybody, including Kenny Gajewski, knows. And then you mentioned the defense. I mean, it goes right in there. There's so many questions. This might be the most questioned defending World Series team, a team coming off a World Series appearance with the most questions that I've seen in a hot minute. Will those questions be answered? Yeah, pretty quickly with the first couple of weeks that they've got. But those questions are absolutely there, and there's a lot of them.
And here's this again, Justin. You mentioned that schedule. Look, you got UCLA that Sunday afternoon on ESPN. Then you go to Clearwater, Georgia, Wisconsin, LSU, Northwestern, Georgia Tech. They go on the road to the land to take on Stetson. And Stetson, all they did last year, win at South Carolina, win at Georgia, knock off UCF in the land. So that's a tricky matchup for Coach Gajewski.
Warren Hobbs, good pitcher who won those 3 games, but somehow wasn't picked all conference or preseason pitcher of the year in the ASUN. Nice job, ASUN coaches. Great job. Heck of a job. Do your homework.
Eric, do you really run your rant about Stetson and the ASUN right now at 9:03 on a Sunday evening? The answer is no.
That's not what I expected to do, the blood pressure raiser here.
Don't worry. I have thoughts on that. Anyway, they go to USF the next weekend. They got Washington, USF, Yale, Pitt, and Loyola of Chicago. And then they come back home to take on a always dangerous South Dakota State team with Christina McSweeney and what she's done with the Jackrabbits. They haven't missed a step since she's taken over for Krista Wood. So, Justin, to your point, a tricky stretch for Oklahoma State to figure out where this team is going to be. And we know this for a fact. This is going to be a completely different team when they start Big 12 play at Waco versus Baylor March 8th than what we're going to see at the start of the season. The question is, what will be the final result for this Cowgirl roster? And will Coach Gajewski get those questions answered in time to make another postseason run?
Well, remember, this is the same team. And again, OU fans in the comments, listen to the words I'm saying, please. This is an Oklahoma State team that should have beaten Oklahoma in that middle game of Bedlam last year.
They were 3 outs away, right? Yeah.
They should have beaten them. There is no reason Oklahoma State should not have split that series. They walk away with a loss even still. I don't think you see that potential. I don't think you have that in this Oklahoma State team this year. Kenny Gajewski can coach, don't get me wrong, but he's got a whole new staff. Well, he's got Vanessa Shippey still there, but he's got a new pitching coach, a very young Carrie Eberly, young in the coaching world. Shippey's now the hitting coach. It's a young team. So Gajewski can coach. They're coming off all these World Series runs in a row now. But there's so many questions, and even with some of that talent back, even if some of those questions get answered, I still think this is a very, very different team, different style of team than what we're used to seeing from Oklahoma State.
Feels like a rebuild, but they're young. And you never know with youth. Sometimes youth kind of overachieves. And, like I said there. Real quick, before we move on, Oklahoma, we've talked Texas, Baylor, Oklahoma State. Give me a Big 12 team, not those 4 teams, that's going to make noise this year.
Kansas.
Victor?
UCF.
Yeah, I'll go UCF. I think
UCF.
I wonder why.
I knew you were both going to say UCF, so I had to throw somebody else in there. Kansas and Casey Hamilton.
11 seniors for UCF. A lot of them played in that group, played in that 2022 team that hosted a regional and, got to the Supers against Oklahoma. If they get off.
Yep. And the thing that helps, they get Texas and Oklahoma both at home this year.
True.
Don't ask me for tickets because I don't know how.
They ain't none available.
At least not OU series. If UCF, by the way, they play in Clearwater week 2, play in Nutter week 3. They got Liberty. They got South Carolina in their schedule. Non-conference open with UConn, Big East regular season champ. They get off to a good start. They could put themselves in the position to maybe be in a host if they do well in the Big 12, but we don't know that transition, how that will go for them. Same for BYU or Houston for that matter. To Justin's point on Kansas, they got a lot of experience. If Kansas is going to break through, and they have the longest drought as far the NCAA tournament for Jennifer McFall, she's super excited by this group. It's got to be this year. Maybe they're the 5th or 6th best team in the Big 12. I'm going to give a shout out Iowa State. This seems to be set up to be the year of Pinkerton. His Chiefs are in the Super Bowl, and Brock Purdy is the Iowa State quarterback for the Niners. It seems like Pinkerton has to deliver. If the stars are aligning in Ames, Iowa.
Yes. Michaela Ochoa and then to keep in mind for the Cyclones.
Correct. Any last thoughts, John? I think you were going to say a Big 12 there, or we're going to move on.
I mean, more thoughts on the Big 12?
No, just final thoughts on the Big 12.
I mean, we didn't talk Oklahoma at all.
We did in the Open. Watch the Open.
That's fair.
Yes.
That's the only thing that
Oklahoma will win the thing.
Spoiler, I have a feeling we're still going to talk about them here at the end.
I think so. By the way, Big 12 pitcher of the year, it will be an Oklahoma pitcher.
Yeah.
But it'll be Nicole May.
I think it's Lexi Kilfoyle. Big 12 pitcher of the year.
I don't think it's either one of them. So
who you got, Justin?
Aaliyah Benford or Dariana Orme, one of the Baylor pitchers. Depends on who gets the bigger workload.
Okay.
Right, okay. Fair enough. We're all going
over. By the way, Big 12 fans, for more Big 12 talk, Eric and I had a Big 12 Media Week last week. All 10 programs, coaches, players, play-by-play announcers, you name it, we had them available on our YouTube channel, on our In the Circle podcast, and also all those interviews available on our YouTube channel as well. So make sure you get you ready for the 2024 season.
And check out 10-12 podcasts. I will be contributing to them this year throughout the year, talking some Big 12 softball with Philip and one of Justin's favorite Iowa State Cyclones of all time. Will be a co-host on that show.
Tyrese Halliburton's got a podcast too?
No, not Tyrese Halliburton. I don't even think Justin knows who Tyrese Halliburton is.
I do. Wait. I do. He plays for he plays for the Pacers.
Yay!
Yes.
Bravo, Justin McLeod. Bravo.
Who's the Iowa State player I'm referring to, Justin?
That would be Leah Nelson.
Thank you very much. I don't know how Tyrese Halliburton got on
the chair lady of the Cycloneers last year.
Yes, very good.
Yes.
Very good call on that. All right. Quick, mid-majors. Last couple of years, we've had a team that's broken through and made some noise. Back to 2021, JMU made the World Series. 2022, I mentioned UCF. They made the Supers. Last year was San Diego State and Louisiana, both making the Super Regionals. Who is that team this year from the mid-major to make some noise in the postseason?
Justin, I will let you go first, sir.
Okay, I've got an answer, but then I also want to cheat with an extra mention just to be on the record with it. The answer to the mid-major, I'm going Grand Canyon. That's the team. They beat UCLA in the regional last year. That's not why I'm picking them. Incredibly deep offense. They play some good opponents, so they've got a good chance at some marquee wins, good strength of schedule, good RPI, and they've got a really deep pitching staff, which, as we all know, is incredibly key for a mid-major to have success at any level, is that pitching staff. They have it. They added Megan Schumacher from Missouri via transfer this summer just to kind of add even more to that depth. So I'm going Grand Canyon is the mid-major to make some noise this year, but I also want to throw out there that I think South Dakota State will be this year's Central Arkansas. This year's mid-major that during the regular season we're looking at pull off some wins with a high RPI. If you look at the teams that South Dakota State is playing, they've got 2 against Missouri, 2 against North Texas, a doubleheader Oklahoma State, Arkansas twice. They play a 3-game series against Duke, and they play 2 games against Florida State. And oh, by the way, they play twice against Kentucky. And I'm leaving off half the list of the marquee games. So I think South Dakota State's in position to be this year's Central Arkansas, in addition to Grand Canyon being this year's mid-major making noise. Now I'm done.
Very good. Vic?
Well, that's a lot of experience. Of course, here's the answer. For South Dakota State, they have not missed a step since Coach McSweeney took over. And it helps when you have a veteran experience that they have. And Toy Kanish, who's one of the best pitchers that nobody's ever heard of. All she's done is she a 3-time Summer League Pitcher of the Year, and she's still doing work over at South Dakota State. I'm gonna go with Boise State. Justin shows what he's done with the Broncos. Won the Mountain West regular season championship last year. They host the conference tournament this year. So I think that's going to be a big benefit for Boise State. Just like South Dakota State, tough non-conference. They play Northwestern, Arizona State. Justin, Boise State, Grand Canyon, Sunday, that opening weekend.
Right.
Keep an eye on that matchup. That could be very interesting for them. Then they play LSU twice, Austin Peay twice. They get Stanford twice, Georgia, Cal. That's all in the non-conference. And then they play Utah. Oh, by the way, that San Diego State series, it's a 2-game series, but it's at San Diego State. But I think Boise State, with that experience they have from last year and the fact that they will have a chance to host a conference tournament this year at home, I think Boise State could be that mid-major to watch in 2024.
Very good. Boise should be good there. I like San Diego State. Remember, they return a lot from last year. So I think Stacey Newman will be right back in the mix. They added Mikhail Macari over from UCF. But I'm going to give you another I'll cheat like Justin. I'm going to give you Boston. Boston's a team that's been a 3 seed, knocking on the door. They got their pitcher back. They got 2 of the top 100 players in the sport quietly. Ashley Waters does a great job there. I think Boston could be that team if you're going from left field. Remember, I think they kind of sneaked into the top 25 quietly late last year.
Yeah.
They've got some experience. I could see them make some noise in that league. And then, Louisiana is obvious. I mean, that's a team they always bring up. I don't believe Louisiana will host. I think last year was their best shot, and they had the metrics. The committee disagreed. Just is what it is. That's going to be interesting. But I think those are teams to watch. And I'll give you another one. Texas State is got everybody back. They could surprise with Jessica Mullins in the circle. Is Jessica Mullins the best mid-major player in the country? That's my next question to both of you.
It's either her or Tori from South Dakota State. And I will be happy to – and if you take one, I'll be happy to have the other.
Did you say player or pitcher?
Player.
Ooh, player.
Well,
but if you want to break it into 2 categories, you can.
Yeah, they should do that for all awards, but that's a whole nother topic.
It's a slim margin, but I'm thinking it would be her or Carly Spade from Miami. Yeah. Obviously, comparing a pitcher to a slugger is a little different. But you've got a list of probably 7 or 8 players that I'd be comfortable if you said is so and so, I would probably say yes to all 7 or 8 of them. But if you're gonna pin me to the wall and put a gun to my head, I'm probably gonna say Mullins or Spades tops at this point.
Very good. I like Liss over at Southern Illinois. That's another name to watch.
Yes, Jackie Liss, only freshman to be the top 100 on D1 softball in 2023. Got a name from TBD softball, Sam Gress from Charlotte. Charlotte's going to be looking to make some noise in their new league home in 2024.
Yes, I agree with that. I do agree with that. Would you say here's the that's an interesting. Is the American the best mid-major conference in the sport right now? Who will be the top mid-major conference at Selection Sunday? Come Selection, is it the American?
Yeah, it is.
I will say yes. I agree with Justin. I think it's the American. I think they will have the most. They could have potentially the most bids from a non-Power 5 league, and it would not shock me. In fact, I'll give you this extra bold prediction on the American.
Mm-hmm.
I think the American will finish ahead of one of the Power 5 school conferences in the RPI on Selection Sunday.
Why are you always dissing the Big Ten?
Yeah.
I didn't say a word.
I was thinking the same thing.
I didn't say a word.
I was thinking the same thing.
There we go. I didn't say. I said Power 5 conference. I didn't say it was.
Well, let's see. It ain't the SEC. It ain't the Big 12. It ain't the Pac-12, and it ain't the ACC. So,
at least I know I can watch. I can watch the American on ESPN Plus. So I know I can watch most of those games. Shout out
Morgan Uber. By the way, Eric, you need to work to get Morgan Uber on a future.
She's a busy person right now.
I know.
All right, Vic, are you going the American? Are you going for the sweep? Are you going American?
Yes, I do. I got American, then Sunbelt.
Over under 3.5 bids mid-major teams. Last year there was 5 that came out of mid-majors. The year before that was 2.
Okay, are we counting Louisiana as a mid-major or no?
No. Again, 5 at the over-under 3.5 at-large bids, not including conference champions. So in other words, Louisiana wouldn't count if you have them to win the conference. That's to be at large.
I guess I'll go first and say, as much as I hate it and hope I'm wrong, under. I'm going to say they get 3.
Over.
I've got over as well. What number you got, Vic?
6.
6. Woo! I like that. I got 4. You want to name them, Vic, or you want to go? You want to give us some extra bonus content here?
Nah, I'll just answer the question and proceed to the next topic. I leave that to the bracketologists of the world, like you, sir, to answer that question for me.
The original, yes. And I'm the top. I've done it for a decade. I'm not giving up that spot to a guy named Dwayne either. Anyway, all right, 6. You got me. Threw me off with the 6.
I know that
I'm
guy.
really intrigued.
You do Justin off of what you said at the opening of the show, so we got to throw you off every now and then.
Let me tell you this. If you're right with 6 at-larges from the mid-major, every mid-major conference should throw a parade to you. Should thank you.
Shoot, it would be nice if I get my own school that I'm allegedly broadcasting for to get more broadcasts and play-by-play than being a freaking analyst. But that's a whole nother topic for another day.
All right, let's get as we wrap up.
Yes.
Give me National Player of the Year. National Player of the Year.
T.R.A. Jennings, finally. I can delve into it more, but I'm apparently big on short answers tonight.
Wow.
I'm going Jordy Ball. I'm going Jordy Ball.
Oh. As National Player of the Year. Okay,
yes.
I like it.
I will go. There's so many choices.
Are there?
Fine, I'll do it. I'll go Valerie Cagle from Clemson.
Back to back, Valerie. Other names, Kiki Malloy, I think is worth there.
Yep.
Skylar Wallace was in the mix.
Maya Brady.
Maya Brady, UCLA. I think there's some other names to bring up. And, of course, Kennedy at Stanford as well.
Dude.
All right. Let's do it. All right, Vic. Let's go with the split the award. Let's just go the offensive player of the year.
Offensive player of the year. I will go with Jennings.
You both go Jennings. I'll go Kiki
Yeah.
Malloy. I'll go Kiki Malloy for if it's off. It's Jordy
By the
Ball.
way,
Yeah.
I want to give I think Addison Bonner from Wichita State. I think she threatens again to get 30-30. I'm not talking about the ESPN documentary either.
That's my answer as far as the best mid-major player. Slight edge over Mullins would be if she's healthy, Addie Barnard, which she is. All right, so we both said the Americans' best mid-majors there. Very good. Loaded. TB softball, I agree with that. I think the American is definitely a multi-bid league. Will lead the most bids for the mid-majors. I got 4 going there. Who is the coach? Who is the coach that we're talking about as far as a hot name, the next big hot name in the industry based on their performance this year? Not necessarily leaves for another job, but just a coach that becomes a hot name. Like Ashley Chastain would qualify last year. Got Charlotte to the NCAAs. Her name was rumored just about every job. She ended up staying at Charlotte. Who's that Ashley Chastain of 2024? I will go first. I will say Ashley Waters, Boston is my choice. What? Followed by Jordan Clark, FAU, because I think FAU makes the tournament.
Okay.
Back to paradise, Vic.
Wow.
FAU in the tournament. You know all thing I do about it. I think they're one of the teams that makes the American tournament. Yeah. All right, you guys turn. I gave you enough time.
If I'm picking Grand Canyon to be as good as I knew they could be, I guess Shannon Hayes has to be my pick in that category.
Fair.
Valid point.
Right.
I will. I'll say Justin Schultz, Boise State.
Fair. I like that. It's good picks. That's good. Circle that. We got it saved. Bold pick. Just give me a general bold pick this year. Not talking about winning. In fact, here's my pick first. Victor, when are you going to schedule to go to Chicago this summer?
Sometime in the middle of August. Why do you ask?
My bold prediction. When Victor goes to Chicago, a prominent coach that has either coached this year or in the past coached in the World Series will retire. That while Vic's in Chicago. That's my bold prediction. A prominent head coach will retire this year. And it'll probably be when Vic's going to Chicago because that's happened the last 2 years. Carol Hutchins decided to retire with Chicago. Allison Habits last year more as an associate.
I'm going to outline how this happens. I land in Chicago. I get a phone call from Eric, and I'm looking at my phone, and the first question I'm going to ask him is that, okay, Eric, what coach decided to hang it up? And then we record an emergency podcast either from the terminal or on my way to my room or somewhere. Because that's literally how it's happened. It happened the first year with Coach Hutch, and then with Paybits at Alabama, I got the news literally as I was walking towards the hotel I was staying at.
There you go. That's my bold pick. That'll be a prominent coach will retire this season after the season that's coached in the World Series. And it'll probably happen when Vic goes to Chicago, if not.
Yeah. Oh, we got some. Hey, get your bold predictions in the chat as well. We got a couple of interesting ones.
What do you got? Here. Yeah, just go ahead. Justy R says bold pick. UCLA will not be a top 16 seed. That's what I'm talking about. That's a bold pick. Bold.
That's bold.
Bold one.
That's bold. Like go, I like that.
All right, who wants to go with the next bold pick here?
This is not my boldest pick, but we still have a few things to go when that will make itself clear. Yes. I'm going to go Pac-12 makes 8 teams in the tournament.
8?
Wow. Sure, why not? Hey, if it happens, I want to say I said it.
All right. So you got one missing. Okay.
I will decline to name who I think will be number 9.
Hey Vic, wouldn't that be classified as the swan song, the sweet? What was the old?
The swan song is the sweetest song of all. Can you get the freaking line right? You've only heard me.
I don't know it's yours. I'd rather you say it. It's yours. It's your liner from the 2005 ASUN championship. It's yours.
I'm all right.
You own the copyrights.
as the voice of UCS softball, you should have already known that line verbatim, sir.
But it's your line. It's your line.
Okay.
You know, that's what we go with.
Yeah.
All right, Vic, what's your pick? But give me your bold pick.
Okay. So, bold predictions for yours truly.
You've had all this time to think of something, and you hadn't come up with anything yet.
Dude!
That's funny.
What do you want me? I mean, okay, fine. Oh, see, Jason Billings, SEC gets no more than 2 teams to the World Series.
I don't know. Well, is that bold? That's not bad. All right, we'll give you that.
I got one for you. The ACC, and I said this a couple years ago, and I was almost right. The ACC will send more teams to the World Series than the Pac-12.
Whoa!
Okay. You came through. You came through.
Wow!
The ACC gets more teams to Oklahoma City than the Pac-12.
All right.
Wow! That's good. Hey, you delivered.
Thank you.
Delivered all
Thank
that.
you.
All right.
Now,
Let's go with this. I think we all know if Oklahoma wins the national title, why they will win, right? They have all this talent, the pitching delivered, all blah, blah, blah. I want to ask you a different question. Oklahoma doesn't win the national title because blank. That's my question to both of you. Oklahoma doesn't, Fort Pete, first team ever to do it in the history of the sport if they accomplish it. They don't do it because blank. Justin?
They're pitching. This is the, and again, Oklahoma fans in the chat, listen to my words. This is to me the weakest pitching staff that Oklahoma has had during this dynasty. The thing that Oklahoma has had going for them for so long in this dynasty is something I talked about earlier. Somebody comes into Norman, and with that crowd and the Crimson and Cream, you're down 5 runs practically before you start the game. That's the effect that Oklahoma has. This pitching this year, though, is not as deep as they've had in other years, and it's not as good as they've had in other years. I'm just going to say it. It's not as good. Kelly Maxwell last year was a shell of what Kelly Maxwell was 2 years prior.
So you think this one's not as good as the 21 that had G. Juarez, Shannon Sale, Nicole? You have that one ahead?
Hey, Nicole May.
Okay. I just want to clarify. Some people are bringing up, FangFi is bringing up the 21 staff. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm just bringing it up as kind of a counterpoint. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think the thing that gets me about this one is they should be
better
in the conversation as the best pitching staff. And I see some comments. They should be. They're not. They're not the best staff they've had. Maxwell last year was a shell of Maxwell 2 years ago. I don't think that changes this year. I saw Kelly Maxwell pitch. Everything that went on this summer, everything else. Nicole May was undefeated last year. I understand that. Nicole May has never had to carry a team through a conference weekend. Go look at the stats from last year. Do you know how many times Nicole May pitched in more than one game during a conference series last year? Happened once. She cannot carry. She's not shown she can carry a team during the conference slate. Then you get to the transfers. Carly Keeney comes from Liberty. Pitched that game that when Liberty took Oklahoma to extra innings last year, walked them off. Oklahoma walked Liberty off. My question to you, does anybody sitting here, of the three of us, I can't keep up with the comments and talk at the same time. I'll come back to that.
Right.
In the first 6 games of the season last year, Liberty played Oklahoma, Duke, and UCLA. All tight games against 3 what would ultimately be really good teams. UCLA was a 1-run win for the Bruins. Oklahoma walked them off, and Duke was a tight game. Of those 3 games, if you think about Carly Keeney, the automatic thing goes, well, Carly Keeney probably pitched them all, right? Do you know how many of those 3 tight games against really good teams Carly Keeney pitched?
None.
I think it was only 1 or 2, right?
It was one. It was the one against Oklahoma. They Paige Bachman pitched the game against UCLA, and Bachman and Emily Estroff pitched the one against Duke. Liberty's system is at the top of the list of why Liberty has been so good. Keeney's good. I'm not taking any flowers away from Keeney, but she's not a superstar. Then you have Peyton Monticelli. I saw Monticelli pitch last year. She's a great thrower. She's got some amazing gas behind her pitches. She's a thrower. Now, you go into OU, maybe that changes a little bit, but she's coming in as a thrower. So I can't sit there and say she's going to be an amazing arm. Then you have Kirsten Deal, top recruit, didn't throw a whole lot, and SJ Guerin, who redshirted. That's your pitching staff. That's not a pitching staff that I'm writing home about.
But Justin, I will push back with you on this. Nicole May doesn't have to pitch multiple games in a series, as you astutely pointed out. Kelly Maxwell, if you need her to, here's the thing. You get May, you get Maxwell, and you can get Deal / Monticelli. And let's not forget what Jen Rocha did with that 21 staff to get them to that national championship. Everyone was talking about the offense and the numbers, and rightly deserved. Yeah. But Rocha was masterful with that staff, with Juarez and Sale and sprinkling some Nicole May here and there to get the Sooners to that first of a now 3-peat for national championships. This is for Jen Rocha. I think for her, she knows what she has, and this is gonna be more of really of a staff approach this year early on. I feel confident with what Nicole May already has done. You bring in Maxwell, you get her in a proper frame of mind, get her back to what she was in 2022 when she was considered one of the best pitchers in the sport, and you have the rest of the staff filling their roles admirably, then this staff, I feel, can be at the end of the season, could be just as good as the 21 staff, but we will have to see.
Go back to your original point about May not having to carry the staff in a weekend. Okay, so you got a 3-game series. So non-conference we've already talked about. So OU maybe loses 1 game max in non-conference. I don't really think they will. Okay, so get to conference play. You play 3-game series on the weekends. Nicole May pitches one of them.
Yep.
Kelly Maxwell probably pitches one of them.
Yep.
Who pitches the next? Who pitches the third? Is it May? Is it Maxwell? Is it one of the other pitchers? If it's one of the other pitchers,
whatever the matchup dictates, Jen Rocha and Patty Gasso are going to figure out whatever pitcher is going to be the best matchup going into that 3rd game of the series. It could be Maxwell, it could be May, it could be a committee situation, but I do not want to discredit what Jen Rocha can do for the staff and with the different options she has. I agree with you, Justin, that they may not be on the level of a Juarez, a May, and a Sale in 2021, but they have the potential to get there. We just have to give them the time.
If OU doesn't have somebody who can take over for Jordy Ball in the inning sense, somebody who can throw 2 games in a weekend, make a couple of starts in a weekend, then OU loses at least 4 games in conference play. If they don't have a third game starter, they need somebody who started one, whether it's Maxwell back to her old self, whether it's May finally showing what she's made of and she can carry a team, or Carly Keeney being better than she ever has been.
One of them.
Could be Deal, could be Monticelli, it could be any of them. But if OU does not have somebody that you can sit here and say halfway through conference play, their 3-game starters are going to be blank, blank, and blank, whether that's May, Maxwell, and May, Maxwell, and Maxwell, May, Maxwell, and Keeney, whatever the mix. If there's not somebody who can start that 3rd game, then OU's losing at least 1 series in conference. They're losing at least 4 games in conference. You're dropping, and they're not number 1 going into the tournament at that point.
Well, I think both of you make good points. I think Kirsten Deal is the key. I do think either her, Monticelli, one of those 2 young pitchers has to have a big role. Maybe it's both. And Jen Rocha, I agree. I would give her the benefit of the doubt. They'll figure it out. And remember, that offense gives you a lot of room for error, especially early in the season.
Yes.
But I do think one of those two young pitchers has to step up. I think it's Deal. I've heard good things about her. She was the number one prospect a couple of years. She's a lefty.
Patty
I think it's
raved highly about her
sure,
when you had
that's
on the
right.
podcast.
I think it's her. I think she has a breakout. And I think it's important for Oklahoma to have one of those two young kids, if not both, step up, not just for this year, but next year when they lose a lot as they go into the SEC. I think that one of the Deal will step up. I'm going to go in a different direction since you both addressed the pitching part. Who replaces Grace Lyons at shortstop, to me, is something that I am interested to see. And I understand that everybody's going to play it and say, we have all this talent that could play shortstop, and that's no big deal. They have all that. I'm telling you, that kid is an intangible player. She brought a lot to that team on and off the field at shortstop in Oklahoma. Talking to JT this year, and I've talked to Patty in the past, defense is critical to their success. We can talk all we want about their pitching. If they don't have good defense up the middle, that's going to be an issue. I'm really curious who plays the steps into that role at shortstop from a defensive standpoint, and who's the leader in that infield defensively. It could be Tiare Jennings. Some have brought that up. By the way, shout out to Mark Barnett, because I'm with you as far as the Deal part of it. But I do think the shortstop, I really have a ton of respect for Grace Lyons, and I do think that's an interesting piece that I wonder how Oklahoma figures it out. I'm not saying they won't. They have a ton of talent, but who does that? Is it Avery Hodge as Womblero from Japan, by the way, checking in from Japan? It's like in the morning over there.
Yes.
Is it Tiare Jennings? Is it somebody like a Jada Coleman coming from the outfield? Is it somebody else? Who knows? But I do think there are questions moving forward. But I think the pitching, you guys have addressed it very well. I will just bring up the Grace Lyons part moving forward. All right. With that in mind,
yes,
it's the moment of truth now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, gentlemen. Who makes the World Series?
Oklahoma.
Bold. That's what we call
Wow, real bold there, Cotton.
All right, so we got Oklahoma out of the way. So Oklahoma's making it. I agree. Although I will say this. Let me just say this. The committee likes to have a good sense of humor from time to time.
Can we make another prediction?
Yeah.
Oklahoma, if Nebraska has a good enough season, the committee would put Nebraska as the 16 seed, set up an Oklahoma-Nebraska Super Regional. I'm just calling it right now, ladies and gentlemen. Bookmark it, clip this tweet, clip this video, and call me when they have it set up on Selection Sunday 3 months from now, excuse me. Nebraska, if they have a great enough season and they win the Big Ten tournament title, they will be slotted in as a 16 seed. That will set up Oklahoma, Nebraska, Jordy Ball's return to Norman, and everyone's going to claim that, they don't do the brackets for television. That's going to be your number one proof that they do.
I think Nebraska will be higher seeded than that, even if you have a good year. But listen, from a TV,
Don't put anything by this.
I don't care if it's the Supers. I don't care if it's OKC. Put them together. Darn right, I want to see it.
As a fan, put them in regionals together.
I want to see it. Jordy against Oklahoma is must-see television. That will be one of the most watched games ever. It might be the most watched game in the state of Oklahoma ever. I don't think it'll happen in the Supers, but if it did, I'd be a little nervous. If I was
fair.
I'd be nervous. Because remember, the last team that would make you a little nervous. That could be interesting television, but I don't think they're going to play in the Supers. But if they did, woo!
Prime time, ABC, Mowen Smith.
Let's go.
Let's go. Holly Rowe. Yeah. Book it. All right.
Anyway, all right. Oklahoma. Who else is making the World Series? All right, I'll go. The reason I don't think they're going to play in the Supers is because I got Nebraska going to the World Series. Jordy leads them to the World Series. Now they might play in that 1 versus 8. Who knows? But I got Nebraska going in the World Series.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, that's my
only 2 teams are making Oklahoma City?
Well, no, I wanted to let you guys go because it was a good segue. I thought it was a good segue to just throw in. We talked a lot about. Do any of you have Nebraska in the World Series? Let me ask you that.
No.
I guess no.
I thought about it, but I don't.
So who do you have?
Justin, would you like to go first, sir?
I don't know. Are we going in a round one by one, or do you want me to list my whole field?
No, just list the rest. I just brought up Nebraska.
Field.
We just got into a whole Nebraska rant.
I'm going to go Stanford.
Yep.
I'm going to go Georgia and Tennessee.
Okay.
I'm going to go Texas. I'm going to say Duke. I think Duke gets there. And then those were my 6 that I arrived at fairly easily. I had five teams in for my last 2 spots, and I decided to let myself come down to the last minutes and decide. I'm going to go deep breath. I'm going to go LSU with their veteran team.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say Arkansas with the Bogle Bombers.
Wow. A lot of SEC there. Vic?
A lot of SEC there.
A lot of SEC flavor. So I agree with Justin on 5 of his picks. So I got Stanford as well. I got Tennessee. Obviously, Oklahoma. I got LSU. I like Arkansas. I like that pick there. I'm gonna go with Nebraska. I agree with Eric there. I think the key with Nebraska, they have to have a top 8 national seed. That's the thing with me. They have to have a top 8 seed. Get Big Red Nation out there, because when they're out in mass, we saw that with volleyball with them when they hosted all those people at Memorial Stadium. That was a sight to behold. So that's 6 for me. I will go with Oregon. And I will go for my 8th and final team. I will go with Florida State. So my World Series: Stanford, Tennessee, LSU, Arkansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Oregon, Florida State.
Okay.
Mr. Lopez?
All right. I've got Oklahoma, as we mentioned. I got Texas. I'm in on Texas. I think they're back in the World Series. I got Nebraska, as I mentioned. I got Georgia in the World Series. I got Stanford. I got Oregon in the World Series. I got Clemson. In the World Series. So ACC finally gets right. I think Rittman, Cagle, that's the team that I feel like gets over the hump this year, gets to a World Series. And I think the 8th is always that wild card, isn't it?
Always seems to be.
Yeah. Could be. There's just one problem now.
What you thinking?
I don't like this at all. But I agree with both of you. I got LSU.
Oh, can I change my pick then?
I know that's. I'm trying to volunteer to make a different pick. I don't want the 3 of us to agree on a pick.
I'm calling an audible then. I'm going to take out Arkansas and put in Clemson.
Okay, but that doesn't solve my LSU problem.
Okay. Let me rephrase that. Take out LSU, put in Clemson.
Wait.
What?
I thought I was having a stroke for a minute.
Like Fred Sanford.
Who wins the title? Give me the title series.
You go first, sir, since you obviously are more organized than the 2 of us.
Oh, my God. That was great. I'm going OU, Georgia.
Oh,
Kirby Smart, baby. And the dogs. They didn't win the football title. Tony Baldwin's going to invite Kirby Smart to OKC Champ Series. Them dogs. Huh? Them dogs.
I don't know what just happened. Are you having a stroke?
Get yourself to okay. I am having a stroke.
Oh, okay.
Fair.
Am I the same one of the 3 of us? I never thought I'd be asking that question about not. And by the way, ladies and
Define
gentlemen,
sane.
Eric and Justin still
Define
have to record
sane.
their part of the podcast for tomorrow, so I don't know how they're going to pull that off.
All right, by the way, all right, just so we don't all say we had LSU, I'm going to go Washington in that spot.
Ooh.
Wait,
just
so
gotta
now
want- we
neither one of you are picking LSU.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
going to
you
leave
were
that to you,
picking
Justin.
LSU.
Yeah, I'm leaving that one to you, Justin. Although I
Right,
hope
Justin.
I like LSU as well. I think LSU. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's LSU Washington Supers with the Kelly Lynch Bowl there.
Yeah, another made-for-television regional.
I'm all for it, man. Let's go. Let's get some interest. Georgia Championship Series. Dogs. Them dogs. Probably we're due for an SEC team to play for a title, no?
Yeah, for a conference that prides themselves as being the best in the country. Find out you haven't had a team.
In fact, I'm trying to, in all seriousness, I'm trying to think.
When was the last time an SEC played in a championship
17,
series?
right? Wasn't it Florida, Justin? The last SEC team? It's been a drought. Shh, don't spread the word. But it's
Yeah, that was the.
And it was. I think it was
17
17 because 18 was Florida State and Washington.
Oklahoma,
19 was
UCLA 19,
19
Oklahoma
UCLA
FSU
was
21, Oklahoma Texas 22, Oklahoma FSU 23. Now next year they'll take Oklahoma and they'll count that. So
yeah, they'll claim them as they'll claim them. And Peter Burns
yeah,
will.
I say
have some
SEC,
sarcastic
baby.
tweet about Oklahoma and Texas.
I'm going to say Georgia in the Champ Series.
Wow,
Them dogs.
Justin.
Kirby Smart, Paul Feinbaum, in OKC, hanging out with Justin.
Your Southern accent impression is
Them
actually better than it's got a right to be. I'm just gonna say that
Thank you.
as the
Thank you.
resident
Thank you.
Southerner here.
Thank you.
Your Southern
Appreciate
accent impression is better than it's got a right to be.
Yes, it
All right.
does.
All right, gentlemen, top it. Very good.
Who's next?
I'll go. I got Oklahoma. I don't want Justin. You go because I got a feeling whatever prediction you're gonna have, I may have the same one.
I thought you want me to save you, but I'll go. I'm gonna go Stanford over Oklahoma.
You got wait, hold on. You got Stanford beating Oklahoma?
I do.
Wow.
I told you the bold prediction was not my boldest prediction. I prefaced this. This is not.
Wow.
I prefaced this 20, 30 minutes ago.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I think Stanford showed they can hang with Oklahoma. You add Taryn Kern, which I think is a twofold benefit for the lineup.
Yes.
You add Kern's bat, but you also make the other bats in the lineup better because they're pitching to them instead of pitching to Kern, for instance. Reagan Krause is better than people realize, and Alyssa Houston is a freshman. She's not necessarily Kennedy, but she's not shabby. So,
No, she's
and like I've said as a theme all along, Stanford's not afraid of the Crimson and Cream. They're not afraid of the crowd.
Nope.
Which is
they
huge.
had those two great games against them last year in Oklahoma City, both won by the Sooners. I got OU completing a 4-peat. I got them beating Clemson in a rematch of the Super Regional. I think Valerie Cagle takes 2024 to kind of put her mark as one of the greats in our sport, makes it Oklahoma City, leads John Redmond back to Oklahoma City. By the way, extra prediction, opening round matchup will be John Redmond's current team versus John Redmond's former team. How about a little extra prediction?
All right, very good. Clemson, Stanford. I like that. Very bold.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be probably dead wrong on about half of these picks, so we just want to give full disclosure on this.
Last thing. All right. Justin picked one already, Stanford. So give me teams that can win the national title if Oklahoma doesn't. Stanford, I agree with Stanford. They can win it. I think Georgia can win it. Who else? I think Texas can win it too, by the way.
Georgia can win it. Georgia's got the pitching depth and the offense. They can win it. I didn't pick them to, but
No,
Georgia
I'm just saying.
has the capabilities
I'm just
to.
saying, give me national title contenders. If it's not Oklahoma.
Okay, national title contenders, not named Oklahoma.
Yeah. Stanford was mentioned. Georgia, I mentioned as a possibility.
That's it.
Clemson,
Tennessee,
do you have Clemson?
I think I got Clemson. Millie Thompson has to pick up and be a legitimate number 2 and take some innings off of Valerie Cagle for that to happen. Nebraska, of course, with Jordy. I think the question with her, does Rhonda Revelle have a number 2 available for her? Again, the loss of Squires for the season. But again, I feel like we're discounting Florida State because you got McKenna Reed. They still have Allison Royalty there. They got Michaela Aidingfield.
You can mention him.
Mudge.
Are you picking him?
I think as long as Lonnie Alameda is coaching Florida State will always be a national championship contender, in my humble opinion.
Jason Billings, you go in Texas, Georgia?
Ooh.
Oh, he likes Texas more than Georgia. Okay.
Well, he has Texas more than Georgia in terms of competing.
I like Texas a lot, too. I don't think that's a bad pick at all. I like Texas a lot. I think Stanford, Texas, Georgia.
Yeah, Jason's concerned about the pitching for both Georgia and Tennessee.
That's the question, right? How good is that pitching? They have the experience. I agree.
I mean, you can really make the argument, Eric, that LSU probably has like the best returning staff in the SEC potentially, but I don't know because. And actually, I think we had a couple fans here that made a bold prediction that said that there will be no SEC teams that make it to Oklahoma City this year.
Well, I mean, they didn't make the football. I mean, they should not have made a football playoff, and they certainly didn't make a championship title game. So certainly that
wouldn't surprise me.
I mean,
Nate Kearney made a bold prediction: 0 SEC teams make it to Oklahoma City. That's a bold one.
On the SEC pitching, Tennessee and Georgia probably actually have the two best returning pitching staffs.
Right.
LSU has one of the best returning pitchers in Sidney Berzon. But Georgia, if you have Walters and Kirpick, because you can't count Backus as a returner, Backus makes them a good bit better. Right. Tennessee with Pickens and Gottschall probably is the best returning pitching staff.
Mm-hmm.
So the top two teams with probably with the best two offenses actually probably have the two best returning pitching staffs altogether.
Especially if Pickens takes it to a next level that they expect.
Yes.
Especially if Pickens takes it to. I think Lynch is. I go back to Lynch as the wild card at LSU from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Yes. If LSU needs Kelly Lynch to be like a Valerie Cagle life for them in 2024, both with the bat and the pitching. If they get that, then LSU definitely can make it to Oklahoma City with the firepower they have offensively.
But I'm the only one that picked them to make it.
Yeah, after all of us picked them to make it, and we all freaked out.
Oh, I like them. I like the people. I do want to pick LSU. I'm so torn. LSU. Well,
you can pick LSU now, and it will not be unanimous if you want to waffle.
No, exactly, because I eventually switched my pick to Clemson.
All right, I'm going to go with Justin. I'll go with LSU, and if I'm wrong, I'll just blame Justin.
Now, who are you taking out?
I'll take Washington.
Who are you taking out then?
I'll take Washington.
Okay, so LSU was in. Then
I kind of do think, boy, that does feel like a super regional matchup, though. Whoever hosts might win there.
Just for the comments, this will be written down somewhere because there's.
They'll be bringing it up and all that.
No, I'm saying it has to be written down because I can barely keep up with my notes.
Victor's got it covered.
I got it. So just to confirm, World Series predictions. Eric has Oklahoma, Nebraska, Texas, Georgia, Stanford, Oregon, Clemson, LSU. He has OU beating Georgia in this champ series. Justin, Stanford, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, Duke, Oklahoma, LSU, Arkansas. He has Stanford winning the Natty over Oklahoma. I have Stanford, Tennessee, Clemson, Arkansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Oregon, Florida State. I have OU over Clemson in my champ series.
I like the fact that three of us have three different champ series. I don't think that's happened before. Usually we've kind of been before. That's good. Yeah. I like that. And I can make this other bold prediction. All three of us will be wrong with something in the World Series. So don't add us. We know already. We're going to be wrong. This is not going to –
Exactly. We're going to be wrong. We're not going to get every pick. Look, if we would have got every pick right, we would all hit the Powerball and we wouldn't even be doing this live stream right now. So let's be honest with them.
You're absolutely not wrong about that, actually.
Yes. In fact, I know it's mathematically impossible for all three of us to get the World Series correct.
Someone's going to be wrong, and someone's going to be loud wrong.
More than likely, all three of us will be wrong.
Correct.
Because there's going to be somebody we don't expect to get to the World Series. That's what's beauty. That's why they'll play the games. Should be a lot of fun. All right, let's wrap it up. I cannot believe it, but we went nearly 3 hours, and me and Justin still have to record a pod segment on the mid-majors. Spoiler, this ain't going to be a 30-minute segment either.
No, it ain't. By the way, Eric, we do have to make the official announcement. Officially. So, coming up on Monday, if you see on the bottom, our 800th episode of In the Circle. We will be joined by ESPN's Amanda Scarborough. You will also hear from Mr. Justin McLeod if he has any voice left after tonight's live stream. And you see, Tuesday, we're going to have Don Richardson from Liberty, John Rittman from Clemson. We're going to have Taylor White from Duke, and Christy Threadbender from Wichita.
There might be an audible.
Oh, hey, that's why I said Thursday mystery guest.
So, could be an audible later in the
week.
Though.
Subject to change.
Yeah.
Schedule subject to change.
Right, somebody, it'll be Dwayne. Dwayne will step into the spot and take one of those slots. Wait.
Does that mean we're going to get over 400,000 dislikes for that if that happens?
No, just for some of our picks. That's what we'll get dislikes. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. Hey, look forward to the content, and we're not going to charge you to look ahead to what content we'll have ahead. So thanks to our guests, Jenna Becerra. Thanks to Raine Wilson for joining us. Thanks to Justin. Justin, where can they find you?
At JustFaxMem on Twitter, which will probably be relevant to quite a few of you halfway through the season. D1softball.com, and Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all kinds of good stuff there.
All right, Vic, this is it. Season's here. Look for the podcast this week. Yes, you've heard down there. We'll have at least 3-4 more podcasts before opening.
4 episodes.
4 episodes before opening day on Thursday. Check it on Eric Lopez ELo. We'll have some more announcements coming up in the Circle SB as well, and much, much more. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure as always.
Yes, it has.
Absolutely.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you go there right now. You can watch my interview with Amanda Scarborough, which you'll also be able to listen on the podcast. Subscribe to the Spotify, Apple, all the beauty stuff there as well. Subscribe to the YouTube channel of In the Circle as well. It's been a pleasure, folks. We'll talk to you soon. Softball season's here. We'll say good night from In the Circle. This has been In the Circle Live.
Remember, there are more of us and there are of them. Good night, Canada and Japan.